Yep, they're on. All right.
We're here at 1:30, so
All right, I'd like to call the
30 minutes or less. I gotta be out here. Oh, we're important.
I'd like to call the IT committee meeting to order.
You'd like to.
Yeah,
Great stuff. Nice start, 7 minutes late.
would you like to open the finance committee?
Yeah, I'll call finance to order.
All right, Terry, are you there? And revenues are on page 6, if we can review the revenues first.
Yep, I'm here. We can certainly do that. Just a note, I do want to talk about the code software today. So I don't know if you wanted to do any of that before the budget or do the budget and then talk about the other things.
Start with the other things.
Start with the other thing.
Okay. So the code application, I know John presented in the Public Safety Committee yesterday. We moved it to IT. So from an IT perspective, I'd like to request a waiver to be able to purchase the software from the vendor, since this is the software we decided on that is the best to go with. It's $51,000. I know there's also iPads that need to be included. I don't know whether we need to include those in there. I think we may need to. It'd be a total of about $4,000 for the iPads that John requested. They would need to go to the admin budget. Those will come out of the cellular contracts. And so the total altogether would be $55,000 that we'd be looking at to move forward with the application. I know we've talked, Brian, a little bit about which accounts to take it out of and such, so I'll let you guys maybe talk about that part a little.
Yeah, I would suggest contingency at this point.
Okay.
And get it done.
Okay. It's gonna move to finance for final approval, right?
Yeah.
Or, yeah, okay. So I entertain a motion to move that to finance. So moved by Sue. Second? Oh, come on. There we go. Thanks. Thanks, Pat. All right. Any other further dialogue on that?
Well, since
All
we're in
fair.
finance, do we just move it now or? I don't know. Sorry.
Yeah, we could.
Okay. Yeah, Brian?
I have a motion.
Motion by Dave.
Brian, is there a second? Sue Blair. Any discussion?
Any discussion?
All in favor, say aye.
All right.
Opposed? Terry? Very good.
Killed two birds with one stone, Terry.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. So the other thing that I'd like to talk about as part of a budget request for next year is a new position in my department. Would you folks prefer to talk about that now or after the budget presentation?
Go ahead and talk about it now.
Okay. So I have put in a request to personnel for a new position in the IT department for a help desk manager. This position, after some time in the IT department now, I feel is very important to be able to allow us to provide some separation between the IT help desk and projects, to be able to continue to move projects forward at a better velocity and be able to put the proper emphasis on providing help desk support, which would also include proactive maintenance so we can take care of things before they become an issue. Right now, the way things are working is the help desk and the project team are all in one. And so the project engineers provide all the escalation for the help desk. So the inefficiency that we're seeing is that one of the project engineers working on a project, somebody from the help desk needs to have some help. So they escalate it, pulls them off the project. They have to go help the user, then get back to the project, figure out where they were at and try to start it up again. And it's just not being, it's not an efficient setup. So as part of the restructuring, I know we've talked about this over the last couple of years. We've been moving forward with some restructuring here in the IT department. So that is the next step to be able to provide that restructuring. I didn't know if anybody had any questions on that, but I did want to talk about that and my hope that that will be approved for next year.
Any questions? Go ahead.
Terry, is it just an efficiency thing, or would you be able to decrease the amount of stuff that you outsource to private contractors?
Good question.
My hope is that we can decrease the amount of stuff that we outsource.
Good.
That is definitely the hope.
Do we have a number for that, or not really? In year 5, it's probably year 1. So.
I'm sorry?
The out years probably have more benefit than the year 1, but.
Yes. Yes, that's true, because for the budget, I do have the contract still in, in terms of the outsourcing to our IT subcontractor. I do still have that in the budget at the same level it was this year because it will take a little time to get that ramped up. My hope for the future, and this is still, possibly a couple of years off, is I really would like the IT department to be able to provide IT services to the towns as a shared service. So that's something else that we can talk more about in the future. I know we've kind of talked about that since I started. That's been my goal. And I think we're starting to work our way towards that. And this will help us to get another step closer.
Go ahead, Brad.
Just one comment to that, and Terry and I had this discussion. Now that internet's going to be all over the county eventually, like in Hebron, it's going to be there this year supposedly. Before we didn't have any cybersecurity issues because we weren't connected in. And now we're all going to have cybersecurity issues. So if we can do this so that I would like to see everyone on the same platform so they can do things remote from here without coming to our offices and things like that. But it would take a lot of work at our own town level to get buy-in for that to all happen. But boy, that would change our costs at the town level drastically. So I think that's where this is going. I'm hoping it's going, but we'll see.
Thanks, Brad. All right. Any other questions for Terry? All right. Awesome. Thanks, Terry.
Okay.
Getting into the budget revenues, bottom of page 6 and 7.
Yep. So we don't have a lot of revenue from an IT perspective at this point. So we have one thing that we neglected to put in here. So I apologize. I guess I thought it was entered somewhere else, but we'll make sure to have it for next year. And that is $8,000 for our bill out to the towns for the TCS software. And then in addition to that, the only other revenue we have is the reimbursement from DSS for the IT person that we provide down there to cover social services, which is $93,000.
So where does the 8,000 go on the top line?
Terry, for 19 and 20, it was 10,000 each year. Want 8 for next year?
That's a great question. I guess when I thought we talked the other day, it was 8,000, but it could very well be 10.
Looks like it was actually 9 something.
Yeah, 9, 8. It'll be about the same as every year.
Okay. 10 it is.
Okay.
And what was it from?
That's where we bill out the real property maintenance to the towns that are, because we all share the same tax collection system, so they all pay us a piece of the maintenance each year.
It's the real property software package.
No, it's a treasury and a tax. So,
Oh, it's just the tax. Really?
yes, sir.
Okay.
So the treasurer.
You looked at much of that, right? I thought it was the other one. Because we do that one too, but that doesn't get billed.
This is on the
But that's
TCS.
the state system, right?
Yeah, that's a whole other.
Yeah,
That's not the assessing stuff.
right. Good.
Thanks, sir.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions on that news?
Can I interrupt for a minute?
Go ahead, Cassie.
Matt, could you please lean forward when you talk? Because from at home, you're the hardest one to hear. You tend to swing back and forth or lean back when you talk. If you could lean forward, because it's hard to hear you.
I didn't think I was that far away from it. All right, I'll bring you guys down though.
I know, but yesterday and stuff, it was, and like you're the most common. You lean back when you talk, which is totally fine. It just makes it hard for us to hear. Thank you.
I'm just trying to stay off the recording, Cassie, just in case. I slip one of those words in now and then that I probably shouldn't.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Cassie. All right, no other questions on revenues? Go to expenses, page 41.
Yep. So starting with the salaries, I believe that's the first thing on here. I apologize. We did make a mistake on that as well. And we ended up putting the part-time, which is 24,000 in there twice. So that actually is not as much higher as it appears to be. So that will be backed out.
So that's it'll be 574.
The 624 is going to go down to 600.
600, yeah. Okay. Which puts it in line with the actual for this year. Okay.
Yeah.
Great, Brian's got more money to work with.
Brian's more money.
Because those are probably the good type of mistakes, right? If there is any.
We had the other one yesterday.
And then I'm not sure your preference on all of the other expenses. I don't know if you would like to go through each account individually and every single item. I try to list everything out so that it's easy for everybody to understand. It's always the fine line for the budget. I don't want to put the specific names of software and such in there, but I do want the board to know which department the software applies to as well, since everything is lumped into the IT department for all of the IT needs. So you have an idea of what it is, whether it's hardware or software, and which department specifically it's for, or is it a countywide system? And so we could go through each individual section, line by line, if that's your preference, whatever, or you can ask questions, whichever you folks prefer.
I'm not interested in going line by line, but just looking at any significant differences.
One thing you'll notice as an overall difference is this year is a year of purchasing more software than hardware. So one thing you will notice is that the computer equipment, the hardware line has gone down, but the software line has gone up, non-capital software. So that's one of the more significant differences.
Hey, Terry?
Yes.
Good, Dave.
Contracted services, you got 6 units at $8,000 each for $48,000.
Yep.
If we hired another person, an help manager, how much do we expect that to be used by?
My hope initially would be that it would go down possibly to 4 to start off with, and then possibly to 3 beyond that, depending on how we do the first year and getting somebody ramped up.
So hopefully in the second year, have it reduced to 24,000.
Yes. Yeah, we're always going to need that additional support. That will never go away completely. We just don't have the in-house expertise to stay up, just like IT is changing all the time, and it certainly does. And I definitely have a preference of using people for the heavy lifting, the very technical aspects of switching and routing from an outside source that work in it every single day, and trying to bring that piece back in-house.
Statement forward.
Kathy's gonna beat you when she sees you, Matt.
So, if we hired a help desk manager, is that person gonna have the expertise to pick up the experience and skills that we don't have in-house already?
No, so the help desk manager will allow the project engineers to be able to focus more on doing the projects and the heavy lifting that we're having to outsource now because we just don't have the time to get it all done. So the help desk manager will focus on help desk. There will be a technical person and be able to provide the escalation that the project engineers are currently providing to the help desk team.
Yeah, but you talk about 2 things, projects you don't have manpower for, and skills you don't have in-house. They're 2 separate items.
And say that again?
You said you use the people from outside to do things that we didn't have skills and experience for in-house.
Correct. Yes, we also use them for projects and such as well. The network analysts that we have on staff do currently have the skills to do more than they're currently doing. We just don't have enough time to do it because they're buried in help desk work. So they'll be able to pick up more of the projects and more of the higher end things, even some of the switching and routing and networking. I mean, they are network people and server work, but right now they just aren't able to do those all the time. It's not an efficient setup.
Can you give us what the Board of Supervisors meeting room upgrade is? Because that might be important to the people who are on this call.
Yeah, so the meeting room upgrade, we're currently in the middle of contemplating whether the room that you're sitting in right now, whether it should maintain as it is in terms of laptops in front of everybody, or we should move to a different avenue. I'm still waiting on the final numbers back and final options that we have available from some vendors. But long story short is the microphones that you're speaking into go back to an audio recording system that is outdated and needs to be updated. So that would be a piece of it. The other piece of it would be the potential of putting video and audio, so cameras, as well as a new audio system into that room so that we don't have to, for lack of a better term, rig it up the way that it is now, or cob job it for the way that it is now, to be able to run properly and efficiently over the Zoom sessions. So we still would likely use Zoom, but we'd like to make that more efficient and then also be able to use additional platforms other than Zoom to do video conferencing and such in the future.
Thank you.
Good, Matt.
Yeah, Terry, just from a number standpoint, it appears in the non-capital software, we went from 0 in 19 to 22,000 last year. Now we're going to 71 and then 208. It's a heck of an increase. Is it because we are just behind the curve that much that we didn't buy any back then that we should have, and then we're all trying to catch up now?
Well, so I don't believe that the non-capital software existed back then. I believe that's one category we created along with the subscriptions. So, but yes, we have been, so the non-capital software is for the purchase of software. We haven't purchased a lot of additional software over the last few years. This year, we have some large purchases such as Caseload Explorer for probation. That's one of the largest ones that we have that's coming down. We also have a data center for server, which is a purchase that occurs approximately every 3 years for the server licensing software.
So should we assume this will continue at this level indefinitely for year to year, or will this come back down because we're making one big purchase this year? Or next
Yes,
year?
that'll come back down. So next year, it won't be. Next year, we'll likely be back to hardware.
Gotcha.
For the hardware upgrades. So it'll go back and forth.
Right. We should expect to see, upgrades every 3 to 4 years.
Yes. Yeah. For software though, once you purchase it, you'll start to see those lines move to either subscriptions or maintenance contracts, depending on what type of software it is we're purchasing. So for example, the code software, you'll see that listed in there under subscriptions for next year because it is a hosted application. Caseload Explorer will also move after we purchase that to that line as well.
Understood. Bob?
I think yesterday, Dan Boucher mentioned Caseload Explorer, just kind of going by what a wonderful thing it was. He did tell us it cost $75,000. Is this brand new, or is this mandated by the state? Is this something that we're doing optionally?
So we are the only county in the state not currently using the software. My understanding is that some time ago, the county was given the option and possibly even a grant to purchase the software, and it was decided back then not to do it. So at this point, we really don't have a choice. We're currently using homegrown applications to run that department.
Okay, so by not doing it before, we lost $75,000. It's going to cost us, the taxpayers now.
Yes. Remember that.
Okay, I think I did, yeah.
You're going to plug in your car.
I just didn't know this was the one that I was thinking of, but, okay. Thank you, Terry.
Go ahead, Brian.
But I think a little more history back where Matt Hicks went too, and Terry is aware of this because she's been changing it. So you're gonna see these lines change, like she said, the software's gonna be purchased, and that number may go down a little, but it's gonna move over to subscription stuff. But if you remember, we were getting to the point where the stuff that was all homegrown and built here wasn't user-friendly and efficient for our departments. This is the total switch to getting the efficiency in departments. And the only reason it could keep escalating is we're going to find more things with more software that can be done. And so the efficiencies are going to be great, but it does come at a cost. That's where we're at.
Good, yeah.
Yeah, Terry, this is Dan Shaw. My question is, the whole department overall has grown by about $200,000 in this budget request, and has grown by about $500,000 since 2019. And I know it's not just your department, it's because, other departments their technology is being funded through your department. What do you foresee in the future? Is this going to keep growing? I know you mentioned about math that, we're going to start seeing some savings here and there, or maybe it wouldn't grow quite so fast, but what is your overall opinion on this IT department as far as this going to keep growing exponentially like this?
So I think some of the jumps we've seen over the last couple of years are large because we've been trying to get everything consolidated over into the IT department. Some of the bigger expenditures that have made it grow are things like the sheriff's office moving over here, where he might have had things separately being billed out to him previously, and some of the larger things like that. I think that we have made a lot of progress over the last couple of years in bringing in some new applications, and those applications will continue to grow in terms of subscription costs and maintenance expenses a little bit each year. You know, I think every application, a 3 to 5% increase is realistic to see every year for maintenance costs. So I don't anticipate a lot of large scale growth. I think this year, I want to say it was about 168,000 for the overall increase. But of course, I just dropped my paper behind the thing, but that's all right. But 168,000 for the year, I believe, was the increase over.
450 overall.
Terry, you went muted.
Terry, you went mute.
Sorry. So I guess long story short is, yes, I believe it'll continue to increase. No, I don't believe it'll continue to increase at the levels we've seen over the last couple of years. I think we're getting to a new normal, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
But you're welcome. But I guess one other thing just to add on to that is that I think IT costs in general are moving from what used to be a capital expenditure to an operating expenditure. So you'll see more OpEx versus CapEx. So you'll have the recurring cost each year rather than a huge cost here and then no cost for 4 or 5 years. It's just a shifting landscape right now.
To make that point, that we used to have our laptops and desktops in capital expense. We transferred that out, capital expense, into normal operating expenses because of the recurring expense. Al made that, but I think the other thing that's happened is, used to be when you bought a piece of software, it belonged to you.
Right.
Now they're shifting from that model plus maintenance to an annual subscription fee, which is more expensive than owning the software yourself, especially with Microsoft Office and all the other.
A lot of platforms, yeah. Yeah. Right, right.
Yeah, and the biggest escalation you're not gonna see here is gonna be in cybersecurity. So, that percentage-wise, that's gonna be huge over the next couple of years. It was huge last year, and it didn't get a lot better this year.
Cybersecurity insurance in the IT department?
No, that is a result of all the stuff that IT is doing. There's more out there, so the cybersecurity insurance goes accordingly.
But if we're more protected because of all the work we're doing, why would it increase? Shouldn't we get a reduction in our insurance? If they're doing a great job protecting
That
us?
will not happen. That's not how insurance
So
works.
it's-
The insurance company always wins.
You have more liability, you're more open to, you're more
So
susceptible.
are we seeing that in the budget? Are we increasing
Yeah.
our cybersecurity? And we know
Our
it's
insurance line, our ineligible insurances where that is.
Why don't we have our insurance and our IT get together to say, how do we keep that insurance rate down based upon what they're doing?
That's probably a great idea if there's a way to do it, yes.
Cybersecurity, just to kind of,
Yeah. It's like saying, we're gonna go out and do expensive driving, and we're gonna buy a better car, we're gonna be more protected, we're gonna wear our seatbelts, we're gonna wear a helmet, but our insurance is going up because we're driving more miles.
And it does.
so one thing.
Go
So
ahead,
one thing
Terry.
to keep in mind in terms of cybersecurity insurance is it's not like auto insurance or those type of things. It's a fairly new type of insurance policy. And even though we are in, I would say, a much better place than a lot of other people may be, we will have a better rate than somebody that's not. However, those rates are going up exponentially everywhere because of all the ransomware attacks and those type of things that people are having to pay out. So it's not something that's going to be like car insurance or those type of things. I think that we'll see a significant increase in cybersecurity insurance over the next couple of years. I could be wrong, but the landscape that I see out there, I think that that's likely to be the case.
As others don't secure themselves, it's gonna result in everybody picking up the tab.
Is it through
Like
NYMER?
health insurance. Mhm.
Yeah.
It is through NYMER. Okay, when's our NYMER renewal?
I don't know, the renewal is. But I would like to reach out to them to see if there are measures that we can take to reduce those costs, or at least try to manage that. So I agree with that.
I wasn't trying to blow up IT. I just wanted you to know that it's a direct relationship with all the.
And I'm gonna challenge you in saying, I'm not sure I agree with you, let's get Melissa, the other Melissa in here to say, hey, let's talk about this, that's all.
Yeah, oh, no, that's true.
And my memory is that we did get less of an increase because of the things that we did through the cybersecurity grant, so it does pay back now.
Yeah, we had almost a 7% increase in February.
And I think it was gonna be more than that if we hadn't done some of the.
Right, and last year's was a lot bigger, which we weren't ready for.
So yeah, there's more discussion.
I think I misspoke, I'm sorry. And that's overall for all the unallocable expenses. Cybersecurity went up 20%.
Okay, there we go. There we go.
But again, you're funding the pool of people who
I
are
understand.
protected.
Yeah. No, it sure doesn't move.
But my memory is that we did get less of an increase because of what we've done, to your point.
Well, I'm just saying, being proactive going forward with all the stuff we're doing here, that should mitigate some of those increases.
You would think.
Yeah. And as we continue to improve our cybersecurity posture, I think that will regulate.
I just thought I should bring it up because that's the discussion we need to have.
Al, you have a question?
It's not for today, Terry, but there is potentially a large ticket item looming in the not so distant future.
Okay.
You want to unpack that?
Good way to say it.
I don't know how much you want to talk about now, so.
I don't know. I'm not sure what you're talking about.
As far as, public safety.
Oh, yes, part of the capital plan.
That's a large ticket item that will not be too far down the road.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
I think after the budget process, we were gonna sit down and go over the capital plan and look at what projects are currently on there. And I think that there's one in public safety that will be added or could be added to that capital plan. So that'll be coming in the near future.
More to follow? MTS? Okay.
Coming soon to a theater.
Yeah.
That's a good taker.
Thanks for picking that up, Melissa. That's really good.
Bad news to worse news.
Yeah.
Well, we got you $34,000 already this morning.
That's got to start the day off better.
Anybody else have any other questions in regards to expenses for IT? All right, anybody in the room? Okay. All right. That being said, we'll close out the IT committee meeting. If there's no other business, anybody have any other business? No other business, we'll close out the IT committee. Go to Health and Human Services.
Your meetings always go better than that.
Thank you all.
I don't try to get in the way.
It's Terry, don't give Jimmy.
It's completely Terry. It's all Terry.
You're giving a good spot there.
It is, it's all Terry.
Let's see if Sue can live up to it. Then we'll know it's just Democrats.
You're still alive.
I know.
What are we gonna do, Jim?
You've met Brian before, right? I mean,
Yeah. You got nobody running against you. You got nobody running against you. So I'm just gonna sit where you are.
now it's time for a write-in.
I'm gonna call those people after you. If you should vote it out loud. There you go.
Yeah, I'll do.
You'll fill the hands of the fire department. No, my friends.
We're live. We're all set.
Okay. Morning, everybody. Welcome to the Human Services meeting. We're gonna start with opening up also the finance at the same time. That's fine.
Yeah, we're still touching, yeah.
Okay, so first thing we need to do is accept the minutes for September 7th.
So moved.
We have a first, a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, so we're gonna go into departmental budget requests. I think I saw Rob York on here.
I'm here and with Harry Carlson, our Deputy Director Fiscal.
Morning, Harry. Morning, Rob.
Good morning. I also have one informational item that I'll follow up with after the budget presentation. So Harry put together our proposed 2022 budget. And so I'm just going to turn it over to Harry to walk through the forms.
Yeah, I'll just go through some of the changes. We're not anticipating any more district money, so that we just left that at 0. As far as the federal salary sharing, we took that up to 80,000 compared to last year, which was around 72. It's pretty hard to tell exactly how much we're going to get, because last few years we've gotten more than 4 quarters of that and so we're never really sure if it's going to get down to 4 or less or more quarters, but right now we're anticipating 80,000 next year. As far as the state aid mental health goes, you can see a little bit of an increase there. That is tied to an additional $30,000 we're going to be getting for the Council for Prevention, which right now they're receiving through a subcontract through Saratoga County organization. And that's going to come over to the state aid. So that's a little bit of a bump there. The rest of it is tied to a COLA that we received this year, effective 4/1. And the money, the increase reflected in 2022, just as that 1 quarter that remains, that'll be coming next year in 2022. The same way down in the budget and the contract amounts, the increase for the alcoholism or OASIS is tied to that 30,000, and the other increases are tied to the COLA that we received. In the past, usually Washington County didn't get much of a COLA because the way it was done in central office. This year they changed the method a little bit, or changed it quite a bit actually. And didn't base it on staff, they based it on just the amount of state funding, state aid that each agency received and that each county received. It was only 1%, but hey, it's something. It was actually a pretty decent amount. We did keep the court, let's see what, at 100,000, just as like it was last year, the psychiatric expenses. Again, depending on whatever the county wants to do, how they want to approach that budgetarily, because that's another cost that it's really very hard to predict on what it's going to be. But basically, that's the changes from last year, and of course, the administration and the payback. That's really going to be geared towards whatever Warren County passes in their budget. The number that we use, we took the salaries up about 2% just to estimate, and then tried to estimate the fringe benefits as best as possible. But as far as the other personal service costs, there was really just very minor increases in the property or rental and membership dues, and everything else pretty much stayed as is. So that's basically it.
Thank you, Harry. Does anyone have any questions for Rob or Harry?
Looks good.
Looks good, Brian.
Just one additional comment on the psychiatric expenses. I think folks are aware that there was a change in the way the chargeback is calculated, and counties are now responsible for 100% of those per diem expenses. It used to be split between the state and the county 50-50. and the state changed that to be 100% on the counties. And so I think it was wise that we started bumping that line up. I looked at it, even though it looks on here like we haven't had many expenses in that yet this year, year to date in 21. But there's a significant lag in the billing. We just received our June bill for Warren County. So next month we'll probably receive our July bills. And then, so I did some checking on it, and Washington County has had 2 individuals in since July, well, 1 in July, and then 1 went in September. So the per diem charge on that is over $1,000 a day. And so it racks up really quickly. So for each individual, each month that they're in, it's a little over $30,000. So I'll keep the committee posted, you know, as the bills come in.
Thank you, Rob. I was just gonna ask about the psychiatric, because that's our normal conversation, right? Do we have enough? Yes, Rob, yes.
Rob, refresh my memory, that's the court-ordered evaluations?
Yes, that's the court-ordered evaluations for competency to stand trial.
Yep. And that can be up to 60 days, is that right?
Well, they can be in longer than that. The average competency restoration in a state hospital takes about 60 days. But people can remain in there longer.
So you're talking just possibly with the 2 that you just mentioned, that could be 120,000, right? Plus the 3506.
It really, yeah, it would just depend on how long they're in. And we also paid for the actual exams out of that same line, so.
Thank you. Brian, any questions?
No, I think the way the revenues and expenses, it looks like our net cost would be around 200,000, which is also good for the services provided, and what I try to pay attention to.
Yeah, 100 of that is the psych eval, so.
Right.
For $105,000, we leveraged $2.5 million in services, so that's not bad.
I mean, I just look like that's pretty good.
Any other questions for Rob and Harry? Okay. Thank you, guys.
Okay,
Enjoy
should I
the sunshine.
move on to my informational item?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I just wanted to mention again, presented to the committee before about some funding that we receive. It's a New York State initiative. It's called the Joseph P. Dwyer Veterans Peer Services Program. And Warren and Washington counties combined together receive $185,000 a year as part of this Senate initiative. It was originally started in 2012, 4 counties in the state, and then each year they've continued, the Senate has continued to add additional counties, and a few years ago our counties were added. We were directed to have a joint bi-county program for the $185,000, and we worked with the county veterans offices. And they sort of collaborated. Warren County ended up hiring a coordinator to operate the program. The program was designed to be like a peer support for returning veterans. Joseph P. Dwyer was a medic who returned from service and ended up overdosing after struggling with depression and PTSD. And so this program was designed to be sort of a peer outreach where a veteran is hired as a peer coordinator. And in any event, the Warren County went through a couple of coordinators and the program never really took off very well. And so we ended up having a meeting with various players involved in both counties, the chairs of board, supervisors, chairs of the committees, county administrators. And we basically sort of came out with a decision to maybe try to retool this in a different direction and go out to an RFP to see if we could find an entity, either a local agency, like a mental health agency, or possibly even, we found a unique program in Rensselaer County. They operate theirs through Hudson Valley Community College. And they have a Veterans Resource Center at the college that operates the program. And it's not for the students, it's for the community. So it's just run out of the college. And so we would include SUNY Adirondack maybe if we do, when we issue the RFP. They may have interest in trying to replicate that, and that might be an interesting proposal. Most of the programs across the state are operated by like a local mental health association. So we determined that after a couple of tries running it through the county, that it might be better to try the RFP route. And Chairwoman, I don't know if you have anything more you want to say. You were part of the meeting. I know Chairman Hall was part of it, and Supervisor Henke was part of it. Anything else anyone wants to add?
I think there was a lot of wonderful discussion, and I think that is such an important aspect of our community. When we talked about ACC, what a great place to be. I worry other than being in southern Washington County and having the distance sometimes is really hard for people to go, but was reassured when I heard there was outreach involved. And so I would like to hear from Kent's point of view. I know he knows this county as far as the vets and what they need and the relationships they build, if that was something that he felt would be important.
Thanks, Sue. I do believe the program is extremely important, especially as you touched on as far as outreach is concerned, and that we're both Warren and Washington County are pretty rural. I think what Rob's direction with the RFP is the way to go at this point. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and not getting different results. So I think it's time that we do something different because this program would be huge for both counties. And I want to see nothing more than to have this program take off. It'll support the veteran communities in more ways than one. First and foremost, that comes to mind is transportation in our counties. That's a huge issue that I've seen since I've been in this position. But that's just scratching the surface. The program can be much more than that. We just need to get it in the right place.
Thank you, Ken.
And just to clarify, the funding does flow through Warren County. Warren County would issue the RFP. I don't know if we need permission or vote from the committee for that to happen.
You're asking something I don't know. Do we have to?
There's no harm in doing a motion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Deb. So do we?
I like the motion.
Thank you, Brian. So Brian has a motion on the table to go out to RFP to Warren County. Do we have a second for that? And the human services?
Yeah,
Yes,
human
you are.
services.
Thank you. All in favor? Okay. That's passed. Okay. Thank you, Rob. Thanks for doing that.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. So we're going to go from is Mike Gray, want to come up to the front? Thanks, Mike. Or I'm sorry, I missed Ken, so if you could sit further, I appreciate it. Sorry, Mike.
Where's James Griffith going? Take them all back, what I did earlier.
Second in line, Ken, you're up next. Thank you.
All right. I think I'll be quick, Mike. All right. So I'm not sure where everybody wants me to start with.
Do you want to start with the budget? And do you have I don't know if you have the same book that we have.
I do. I believe I do.
So we want to start with the
Revenues on page 17.
Sure. So I'll start with the revenues, which is the standard state aid that we're getting, $10,000 anticipated. And then we'll move on to the expenses on page 77. So the expenses start with the telephone line. I've requested an increase just because as we have moved more remotely, myself and the deputy director are relying more on just being available whenever through our mobile phones, and that increase is basically just for the monthly billing. I skipped office equipment. I apologize. I don't usually touch base on that, but I did request $5,000 for office equipment because our office is in severe need of new furniture. Both the clients' chairs that they sit in are filthy to the point where they can't get cleaned. But our desks are severely old and falling apart. The top layer of wood is falling apart, and we got new chairs a couple of years ago, but the chairs don't even push into the desks. So they're kind of leaning forward in our positions. I know my clerk has a steel desk that's from 1950 something. So I've requested that. Postage line. Postage line was down last year just because we've kind of digitalized our processes as far as submitting things to the VA. A lot more electronic submissions. But I anticipate that picking back up because this last year, due to COVID and stuff, the record centers where we typically get records back for veterans and then send them out to them, they've been down. So we did notice a significant dip in getting medals and awards back from National Personnel Records Center or VA Records Management Center or places like that. The office supplies, there's really no change. I haven't requested anything more there. I don't anticipate our needs increasing to warrant anything. Same thing with dues and subscriptions. A lot of our dues for our accreditations and things of that nature were waived actually last year. So we didn't end up having to pay a few of them, but this year with everything going virtual, a lot of our training is going virtual. Those dues, I believe, are going to be required again. The travel line decreased our request. Last year we had requested 1,400. This year I'm requesting only 1,000 because that training is going virtual for both American Legion and I know NAC-VSO, which is another place where we get accreditations, was typically a conference we have to travel to, but it was virtual last year as well.
Chairwoman, that line he just said he dropped to 1,000, still says 1,400 in the budget.
Oh, I apologize.
We can take 400 out of that, is that what you're telling me, Ken?
Yes, we can actually. I made a mistake.
It's going the right way, so all good.
What's that?
It's going the right way, no problem.
I try. So the education, training, staff development line, that's maintained the same just because a lot of those questions do remain unanswered. The NAC VSO conference may not be virtual. We may be traveling, but they've made some alterations, and between myself, the deputy director, and the clerk, who's also accredited this last year, only 2 of us would have to attend the conference. The one, I would say, significant increase is my mileage expenses carpool line, just to cover fuel costs. I touched on it earlier, but one of the issues within our county is transportation for veterans who are disabled. And the way the VA is moving is they're contracting a lot of doctor's visits and exams out of the VA network. You know, they're using a community care program more and more often. So in the past, we would provide transportation a few days a week down to the Albany VA hospital and back. And I really try to stick to picking the veterans up at their home residence because a lot of them are severely disabled or wheelchair bound, et cetera. But with the community care, the VA, contracting out these exams, I feel there's a need for us to allow or provide the veterans of the community that transportation to more local doctor's visits if they need that. If the VA's contracting an exam somewhere in White River Junction, which is another VA facility that's just across the border in Vermont, but it's a Washington County resident, I think we should be able to provide that transportation for them. So that budget increase request is to 15,000, just to, again, cover the fuel. One of the things we did this year is hire a second part-time driver to be able to cover multiple days a week. And I think I've covered everything as far as expenses. And then the last thing I didn't touch on is the last request I would like to make is if it's possible that my salary be reviewed this year as well.
Any other questions for Ken?
Joe?
Sam?
Yes, Chairman, I just have a couple comments here. First of all, Ken, you forgot to mention in your brief the fact that in 2019 fiscal year, the federal fiscal year 2019, Washington County veterans brought in $30,774,000, and that included comp and pen monies, it included educational monies, it included medical bills and those types of things that otherwise might have been picked up throughout our social services program. And just referring to the comp and pen alone, it goes directly to the veterans or to the veterans' widows or their children that were eligible. That was $17,192,000 in 2019. That you could have explained to them because you'd have had those numbers. But I know one thing you wouldn't explain, and I will bring out now, is that we can be very proud of Ken and his operation because my veteran group on the street told me that recently Ken got an award of approximately $150,000 for a widow in the town of Cambridge that had been going on for about 12 years and finally was able to convince the VA that she was authorized that money. And I know how hard those are to work with the VA, and Ken, you're to be commended. And I've heard nothing out there but good things about the veteran agency down there. So that continues on. And we certainly appreciate that on behalf of the veterans community and here at the Board of Supervisors. So keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thanks, Chairman.
And I ditto that, Ken. I've seen it in action, so thank you.
Thank you. Sue.
So any other comments or questions for Ken? Okay. Thank you, Ken. Have a great week.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
My information, my revenue, my department goes 7310, but I'm on pages 18, 19, and again, that's revenue. Expenses are on 81, 82. So overall, on my requested thank you budget, revenue's up 6.6% against 2.3% in expenses for the year. So I'll get into right in the middle of the page, on page 18. Departmental income, you'll see 29,500 projected revenue, and that's just that's up 5,000 over last year due to the fact we're getting more referrals from Warren County for the Alive at 25 program. The next line, $20,000, that's a contract with Hudson Falls School to provide services to incarcerated youth. And if you move down to interfund revenues, you'll see the total amount plus 263, 574. That's a combination of state funding, which is 62, 38% local share, and 100% raise the age funding, and 100% state harbor funding.
Mike, is the safe harbor going away this year?
No, we were able, by working with DSS, we were able to identify state funding, and full funding would be 6238 under STSJP to continue the program. But what we've done with that program is that coordinator is also handling the responsibilities of the new pre-PINS program, which is also reimbursable under state aid. So he's wearing two hats, but so far he's had 29 youth for the Safe Harbor program, referred sexually exploited youth program, 29 this year, and 13 pre-PINS kids. So those normally a PINS petition is filed with the county. They come into the system, and the one thing we know, if we want to mess up a kid, bring them into the system, honestly. So what we're trying are working collaboratively with DSS is to keep the youth at home, give the family the skills they can to take care of the problem, to try to solve their own problem. So out of 13 referrals, and he just had 4 more yesterday, only 1 has gone into the system as a result of that. So it's been cost effective. It's great. So that's what we're doing with that. Anything else, Bob?
No, I would just, that's a kind of a hot button for me is that the Safe Harbors program, and the state money looked like it was going away, so.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know, the state gave us 5 years seed money to run the Safe Harbor program to cover it. And then last year, we budgeted 0 for that funding because no one told us, identified any revenue. Then they came back later and gave us $30,500 for that program. So we're in good shape now. It's our plan to continue.
Okay.
All right.
Good.
Thank you. So if you move down to the state aid at the bottom of the page, you'll see the revenues there pretty much remain constant all the way through, and that's for the community service program, drug and alcohol program, pay reporting, and public safety other alternative sentencing programs. So if you turn to page 19, are there any questions? I don't mean to be going too fast. Page 19, state aid for youth programs. It's decreased $16,000 over last year, and that's just directly related to pass-through dollars that the state sends us to send to the Wic House, the homeless youth shelter. So right now, we can't count any additional dollars, so that's what that is. It's not anything to do with county, it's all state pass-through. And then if you move down to
Well, the total on revenue, 636,530. And if there aren't any questions on revenue, at the end, I'm going to talk to you about some potential revenue that may be available to us for next year. All right. But I didn't include it in the 2020 request. All right. If we can move to page 81 then, on expenses. It's down at the bottom of page 7310. You'll see salaries, there's a $12,000 increase, and that's just due to steps. The next line down, 9424, is our part-time summer youth employment worker, as well as overtime, 20,000. I increased that from 14, and time and a half, I increased that as well. And the reason I did that was because I had a chance to roll over some unspent funds from the state for 2021. So I saw it as an opportunity that we could use it here to expand youth employment and also some community service. And then I guess on-call YAP it is what it is. That's the overtime, but that person also covers our on-call for house arrest. We always have some youth, a few youth on. It also handles the adults as well. So, and if you turn to page 82, I'm going to skip employee benefits. Costs are what they are. There are no equipment purchases in this request. If you move down to contractual, you'll see they remain pretty solid, except $500 more for telephone. Moving down, then also non-asset equipment, mowers and trimmers for community service. So if you move down to the bottom of the pages break down budget transactions for electronic monitoring, again, which handles adult and juveniles, our OCFS youth programs, and our STSJP programs, which is contracted with parenting with Cornell and employment and incentives. So that's the budget.
Mike?
Yes.
Is there state aid to offset the electronic monitoring? That's a state mandated program.
No, it's, we bill DSS under STSJP 6238, so we have 38% local share.
Okay.
But the cost of that 38%, $22,000, is nothing compared to, we'll take an inmate out on 100% medical costs at the county, say they're hospitalized, all in med. State law requires, corrections law, you have to have 2 guards around the clock, same transportation back and forth. That can be almost $2,000 a day, just in those costs, not the medical. But when they're incarcerated and non-medical, they're 100% on us. So what happens is, we get an inmate hospitalized, they kick them to us, under our custody. We have a close working relationship with the staff in either hospital, and we now are on the hook for 25% of the cost. So the cost effectiveness of electronic monitoring is it's a no-brainer. I mean, and it's also specialized housing for youth now with the raise the age. There's no beds available. If you go anywhere else, the cost can be almost $1,200 a day for one juvenile in detention. So we're using this in lieu of detention a lot of times. So, but we're dispersing the cost of that program, the on-call, and also the equipment cost to the state as much as we can. And that's through our relationship with DSS. So, great. All right.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Mike, the White House revenue was down 15, a little over 15,000.
Yes.
What line is the corresponding expense with the money going out down? Is that the youth program?
Youth programs, yeah.
The 77,000 is down by that same amount?
I thought about that, yeah.
He said it was a pass-through, so
it is a pass-through.
Yeah, so the expense will be down the same relation?
Yes, it will. Yeah, it will. It's like when I put in for other is like drug testing for felony drug court. Those tests are expensive, $75 a piece. So our budget is up, but we collect from there. They're paying it.
The other thing that I would ask the budget officer to consider, the 4440 line, the miscellaneous line. We've been moving slowly but steadily out of that miscellaneous business, that line item. I'd like him to consider moving that money into account 4290 program expense.
What's in the miscellaneous line, is my question?
There's a whole list of things that are all program,
It's all
they're all, they could all be appropriately coded as program expense. Nothing you did, Mike, it's on our end.
I can work with the budget officer to do any, you know,
You just want to different.
That miscellaneous account, we're just trying to get out of that world. Yep. We're slowly making chips away at it.
all right. Are there any questions about the 22 requests right now?
Chairwoman?
Sam?
I have a quick question. Mike, you mentioned the ankle monitoring program. Is that coordinated through probation at all with the raised aid funds, or how is that, the age funds? How is that actually?
That's a good question, Sam. Probation on the youth part of the county court the judge can require that youth be placed on electronic monitoring. And when we do that, we capture that expense and then submit to the state. So the expense, which is about $1,000, we capture 100% under raise the age. And in this year's budget, I have about $5,000 in revenue for that. So I do work with probation on that, as well as community service for raise the age youth. And that's about the extent of it.
Okay. Thanks, Michael.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Any other questions online or here?
If I could, I have a couple things I'd like to talk about potential, possibly. So in June, when I presented in front of the board, I talked about the possibility of state approaches if we merge with Warren County. Think about taking over their youth bureau services, and you gave me permission to go ahead and feel it out and work through the process. So I met with county administrator, county attorney, chairman, chairs of both committees that I report to, and we talked about the pros and cons of going forward, and there was an interest to go further. So we developed a draft MOU, and that's with the county attorney right now. And I also forwarded a copy to the state because there's specific requirements in a MOU that have to be addressed for state regulations. So everything is in draft form right now. Warren County, their DSS presented their budget. The commissioner reports to me that there's 100% support for going forward with the merger. So there's some specific things and regs that we'll get to when it goes in front of you for a vote. But like, I have to be named Warren County Youth Bureau Director on paper. I'm still a Washington County employee. The dollars would funnel that are designated for Warren County would go to Warren County. I would facilitate the awarding of those dollars, but they would do the dispersing of the funds. So the amount that we spoke to Warren County about said would be required is $105,000, and we would bill them quarterly for those services. And right now they're I know anticipating going forward with it. You know, after we work on the MOU and it goes in front of you, then we'll proceed. So there's more information that needs to be filled in. But are there any questions at all?
Timeline.
Sure.
What's the timeline?
Oh, the timeline? Well, right now, the draft with the county attorney who's on vacation, I imagine we'll wrap it up hopefully next week. And then I would like to have it done prior to our budget, of course. Yeah, I know. But I hope to have it done in that. So, I'm sorry, Matt, you had a question?
Well, basically, the question is on net cost, is we have revenue coming from them, but our expenses would go up $105,000 or less than $105,000 or more than $105,000?
It'll be less than $105,000, but that's going to be presented to your personnel committee by Danielle. I've had staffing request changes. I know.
Is there more than just .1 that'll be affected by this merger, or from our standpoint, or
Yeah,
Primarily .1.
it would be .1.
Okay. So our net cost actually would go down.
On this 22, yes, it would.
Okay, great.
All right, and then, are there any other questions on the merger? Okay, thank you. And then, also not included is this, in this budget request is that, a separate MOU with Warren County Probation. They would like to refer you to our program. We don't have a lot of them, but we have opportunities to serve some of the youth, which are 100% state reimbursable, for us. So, I anticipate potential probably $10,000 additional revenue in doing that, in serving youth. So, that's it. And the last request I have is, I'd like to have permission to submit an RFP to Warren County to provide their alternative sentencing program. So, on September 13th, I received an RFP from the Purchasing Department in Warren County, a call from the probation director asking us, and their alternative sentencing is nothing like ours. They have a community service program. So at first, I'm very interested in submitting an RFP, but the opportunity exists for us to do it because of the change in legislation and the number of referrals coming into our community service program. When marijuana was legalized, we lost about 1,800 hours of court-ordered community service. So that provided an opportunity for us to do administrative. Now, in Warren County, they don't do a lot of any crews. My belief is that they just refer out to about 20 different programs. So referral comes in, a maximum 175 referrals a year. And then you would just refer them to a community-based organization from the other worker or municipality. Now, I think my first concern was liability, indemnifying Washington County, but in the RFP, it clearly does that. But in the MOU, if we decided to go forward, if we even won the bid, there's no guarantee to that. But if we won the bid, there's certain things that we could look over and say, we'll agree to this and that, and go through it with a fine-tooth comb. So I think it's an opportunity. I would like to be able to get permission to submit an RFP for that, and then I'll bring it back to you. Yes.
So if community service and you're doing it in Warren County, they would still be doing it in their community. They wouldn't be coming over here to do community service.
That would have to be worked out in the MOU. We do crew work, so, and a lot of times.
Well, I don't know if it's even legal.
Well, yeah, I think it's nothing illegal. We try to facilitate the hours quick. Somebody comes in the door, we want to get them out as fast as we can. So if we're doing crew work, and it fits, and we're doing weekend work where if somebody's has a full-time job and we're available to work on the weekends, we have stuff going on, yeah, I would work that out in the MOU. The one thing is indemnifying us. If a Warren County person gets injured at all, it would have to be on Warren County's workers' comp, not covered by ours, which I think is clearly stated in the RFP. So I see it as an opportunity, a real opportunity, especially with the trend. There are other things contributing to the numbers being done. For whatever reason, people were willing to pay fines, then not pay the fines. Agree to pay the fines, but not pay them. And instead of community service, and a lot of times, and there's a lot of speculation as to why that is. Anyway, so I guess I'm asking permission to submit an RFP.
I'll move that.
Do we have a second? Human Services? Anybody? Online?
Here.
Is that Matt? Seconds it. All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thank you for going forward with this. I would be curious as to whether people from Washington County can go to Warren County and people from Warren County serve in Washington County. How is that crossover going to look?
That's what I'm saying. If it is, it is. That's good.
It'll be interesting.
It will be.
It'll be a challenge.
It's an opportunity.
It is an opportunity.
And there's a lot of discussion as to where, the intake to be done, space to be by Warren County Probation. And
Your staffing request for next year?
thank you for that. Well, that, I do have, staffing requests and upgrades. So with the merger, Danielle is going to be bringing it to you on October 7th at the personnel meeting. There is one position for the youth bureau, which would be covered under that $105,000 as well. And I also mentioned back in June that this year, regardless of any mergers or anything going on, I was going to bring to you the need for me to look at upgrading our staff based on the work they do. So right now I have court referral specialists and also program specialists, and then they come in and as I mentioned before, they take on about 4 different roles, and they take on more responsibility. And I would like to be able to recognize that by creating a court referral specialist 2 and program specialist 2. Once somebody, it's not automatic, but I work with personnel and administration to design a fair, equitable process to be designated as court referral specialist 2 or program specialist 2. And also, if we do that, I'm going to have to create space for my supervisor as well as my assistant director. And I've also asked for my salary to be reviewed as well. Is that okay?
Thank you much.
No, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to go into public health. And is Tina? Hi, Tina.
Hi, how are you?
Good, glad to see you.
You too.
I think
Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to start to go through the budget. I think I have the same packet that you all have. Our revenues start on page 7, if I'm looking at the same one you are. About halfway down the page is the 2960 account, which is our preschool account. So the first revenue item there is the 162102 account, and that is for the funds that we bill to Medicaid for the preschool services. And as you all know, we've had a strange couple of years, 2020 and 2021. So we are keeping that amount consistent going into 2022. And then the next revenue account there is the 3446 account. That again represents our preschool program. We get reimbursed from the state education department 59.5% for our preschool expenses. So that is that revenue account fluctuates based on what our expenses are. And it's a direct correlation to the expenses because of the 59.5%. And that's for evaluation services and for transportation expenses for the preschool program. And then going to the next page that we have revenues on is page 12. And these are our public health revenues. I'm just starting down at the bottom of the page, the 4004 account. That first account represents the billing that we do for our licensed home care service agency for the visits that we're making out in the community for the new moms and babies. Again, it's been a strange year. In 2020, you can see that we had very little billing going on there, which is also occurring again this year. We're hoping to getting back to normal operations. We did have over the summer, we were going back out and we are still now, if we get, a high risk referral, we are still trying to make those visits out in the community, but it's definitely less than what we were doing pre-COVID. The other public health income, that is for, if we get chart copying requests, it's more of like a miscellaneous public health income where we're putting things that, miscellaneous income that we have. The next one is immunization income. That's when we have people come into the office to get shots that they need, either to go back to school or employment or just to get people up to date on their immunizations. So that account, again, is consistent with the previous year's budgeted amount. That too has also been down. There was a time where we were limiting the people coming into the office, but we are having people come into the office now, if they call us and need a shot for something. The next page, page 13, continuing with the public health revenue. The big revenue account under public health is the 3401. That's our state aid. We get reimbursed $500,000 up to $500,000 is our core grant related to the Article 6 state aid, and then anything over the $500,000, we get 36% back reimbursement. Also included in that account are a couple of our smaller grants for our rabies program, and also our lead poisoning prevention program are also included there. Also included there, when the health commissioner declares an imminent threat to public health, that's also part of our state aid funding, which would also be included in that revenue account. The next one there is the 4401 account. That is our immunization action plan revenue for that grant. So that's that amount is the same as it has been the past few years. The next one, the 448902, that one is for our public health preparedness grant, as well as any of the COVID revenue accounts, the COVID grants that we've received, which are significant. We had a large amount that we added to our budget in September. And then what will happen is at the end of the year, the money that's unspent will carry over into the 2022 budget. So that's why that account is zero at this point, because we don't know what we'll spend between now and the end of the year. So we wait to carry those over in January. The 4005 account, our family health revenue account, that is our car seat program. And again, I think we just recently added money into that account, the $15,000 for the car seat grant. And again, once the end of the year comes, we'll do a resolution request to carry that money over into the 2022 account. The 4006 account, the gifts and donations, that's where we put, when we hold our rabies clinics, they are free to the public, but people can make donations when they're coming through with their animals. So we have a revenue account set up for that. So that is representative of our rabies donations that we receive at clinics. The next revenue account is the early intervention. That's the 4059 account. That's for our 0 to 3-year-olds or 2-year-olds in that program. The 1621.04 account, that is for Medicaid billing that we do for service coordination for the service coordinators that we have here in the office.
Dana,
Yes.
that account has been zero for 3 years. Do you think there's going to be money coming in?
Yeah, and I wanted to talk to you about that as well, Al, because I think what might be happening is the revenue that we're getting for that is possibly going into a different account.
Okay.
So we can talk about that. I think when we're sending it over or when it gets over to you, somehow it's getting into a different account. It might be going into our preschool account. So I had noticed that as well. And that was something I wanted to talk to you about.
Okay, that'd be great.
So
Okay.
Tina, a question on that, Tina, what account is that in, and is that lower than what you have in your actual, so that we're offset here?
Yeah, I think what's happening is I think it's going into one of the 2960 revenue accounts. So I'll have to pull that out and see, how much has been put in there to see if it's around the $20,000.
So I'm just thinking I'd expect your department request would be lower than the actual by $20,000 if that's the case.
Right. Yeah.
We'll circle that. Right. Yep.
I
I said thank you.
Oh, okay. The next account is the 3449 account under early intervention. That one represents 50% reimbursement that we get from the Department of Health for any early intervention services that we provide that aren't reimbursed through a different method. The state has taken over the fiscal part of that program, so they do the billing piece on that. And then we are responsible for anything that's not paid through insurance or through Medicaid, and that comes out of our escrow account. And then from that, we get 50% reimbursement of what we've paid out of that escrow account. So that's what that revenue represents there. And again, that would be reflective of our expenses for the early intervention program. And on the next page, page 14, is the early intervention, the 4059, 4451 account. That's for our early intervention administrative grant. That's a grant that we get each year to cover the administrative expenses for the early intervention program. So that again is one of the grants that we carry over at the beginning of 2022.
Steve,
Mm-hmm.
and that one, we've been getting money for 3 years, you got nothing in the budget.
That one, as far as that one, I think because the grant is behind on getting us the contract. So I don't request a resolution until we have an executed contract from the state, which I believe at this point, it's in process. We thought we had it and it wasn't executed in Grants Gateway. So we're waiting for that, and then we'll request a resolution to put that money into the 2021 budget and then carry over into 2022 at the end of the year. There was a delay in the receipt of the grant as far as the paperwork piece.
We might want to talk about that one later too.
Okay.
Much like we collected yesterday, once you know we're coming, you know. Thank you.
Sure. And then we have our WIC program, the revenue for WIC. That is 100% federal funded through New York State Department of Health. They're passed through from the USDA. And as you can see that they are going to receive more funding than they had in the previous year. Their grant period is different than our fiscal year. Their grant period starts October 1st. They're on the federal fiscal year. So there's always, our budget's always a little bit off from, what they have in their budget through the state. And that is it for the revenues. Our expenses start on page 49. So the 2960 account represents our preschool expenses, and they're all pretty similar to the previous year. I don't know if you want me to go down through these line by line. I can hit on the bigger ones if that's would be more efficient for everyone. The 2960-121, that's our salaried people, or our people that are in the preschool budget area and early intervention. We don't have a separate salary line item for early intervention. It's all in the preschool. You can see that the amount is down a little bit from what we budgeted for 2021. There's one less working day in 2022 versus 2021. Plus we've, as we bring new people on, they are at a lesser, they start at base. So it's a little bit less than what we had budgeted for 2021. You can see the overtime line for 2021 is significant, the actual amount at this point. That is strictly due to COVID, where all of our staff is, working a lot on COVID, including overtime and weekend time. It's kind of a joint effort over here, no matter what budget you actually fall into. Everybody's been involved in the COVID response. So what we're doing is when we get our grant funding, everybody's listed separately in the grant. So it'll hit these accounts when we get that grant funding to offset those expenses. And any overtime that we do on the COVID response is 100% grant funded. And a lot of those grants we just had put into the budget in September, into the 2021 budget. Buyouts and incentives, that we are anticipating retirement in the preschool program. So we would budget it for that. And then I do have under fringe benefits, I just, is this the one? Nope, it didn't happen here. So I'll talk about that later. So down under the 0.4s, under 2960, just to hit on a couple of the big accounts, the 4040 account is our contractual expenses for our preschool services. That's for the evaluations that they receive. And again, I had talked about these expenses have a direct correlation with the revenue. So when you change these expenses around, it also changes the revenue there. The $10,000 budgeted under 4120, that's for our McGinnis software that we use for the billing of the preschool services to Medicaid. And then flipping to the next page, on page 50, the big account here is the 4520 account. We budgeted that at 2 million, which is the same as what we had budgeted in 2021. If you look back the previous years, 2019 was almost 2.5 million. And then it was quite a bit less in 2020, which isn't surprising considering COVID. There wasn't a whole lot going on. I shouldn't say there wasn't a whole lot going on, but the preschool program, the kids, they weren't going to centers. So the expense was significantly less in 2021. So we are keeping it consistent with the 2021 budgeted amount. Same thing with transportation. Because of COVID, they're limiting the amount of kids on the bus. There's less transportation. So even though we had increased the amount that we're paying during, we are still forecasting that amount to be less than what we had budgeted for 2021. And we did use an average in the past 3 school years from 2019, 20, and 21 to come up with, an estimate for the 2022 request for transportation. And again, that is one of those expenses, again, that's 59.5% reimbursable from the state ed department. Moving on to public health on page 67. Under the public health 404, you'll see that we have budgeted a little bit less for 2022 versus what we had budgeted for 2021. Again, when we have people retire or leave public health and we replace them with new hires, the amount is less because, people that have been here a long time are higher up on the longevity scale. So that's why there's a reduction there in the requested budget amount. You'll see the time and a half. It's the same situation that I talked about under the preschool account. We're at 98,000 right now for overtime for public health. Again, we budgeted for 10,000 for 2022, but we will be carrying over those grant amounts that we had put in our budget in September. So whatever's unspent, we'll be moving those over to cover the overtime for 2022. The one thing I did want to mention here with the fringe benefits, they were somehow they were entered twice. So the amount that's under the 0.9s here, under employee benefits, is also showing on page 68, under the 404.8. It's the exact same amount. So I had talked to Sandy about that. We're not really sure how that happened, but I did want to bring that to your attention. So one of probably the 404.8 would have to be removed from the budget. So that's significant. It's 296,000 that needs to come out. Yeah, that's what I thought. And then just in speaking with that, the same thing happened under the Wic program. Now that we're on that subject, so that would also need to be removed. It's on page.
Another 124,000.
Yes.
Page
Yep.
71.
It's on page 71. So that would also have to be removed. So going down through, if we flip to page 68, the 404 expenses. Just to mention a few of the line items here, the dues and subscriptions, that's our New York State Association of County Health Officials dues, and also the Home Care Association dues that we pay. They're big advocates for us when it comes to public health and home care issues. The consultant line, the 4080, that account has been, if you look at the 2021 amended budget, we had carried over money from the district funding that we had received. That money still has not been spent. So we'll be requesting to carry that over into 2022. We've carried it over for several years at this point. So again, that money would be carried over into the 2022 budget. And one thing I wanted to mention under insurance, you'll see that there's an increase there. We did receive word from county admin that the health insurance for healthcare workers, the liability and malpractice insurance, there was an increase there. So that's why that line item has been increased. Under maintenance contract, the 4120 account, the 10,450, that represents the maintenance that we pay for our medical billing software to MedEnt. It also is copier maintenance. We also have a quarterly fee that we pay to Mahoney for the security system in our building.
Tina?
Yeah.
The software maintenance, is there a reason that's not under IT like the rest of them?
For the MedEnt?
I'm sorry?
What was that you said, Al?
Countywide, the computer software maintenance all got moved to IT. Is there a reason that yours is still in your department?
Well, I don't know. I guess I hadn't realized that had all been moved. That is a standalone agreement that we have with MedEnt, and we do get reimbursed through state aid for that. So we would have to have it be an expense in our account.
Okay, that would be why. Yep, question answered. Thank you.
The 40,000 represents the Mylar that we reimburse to buildings and grounds for the maintenance of our building. So just so you see that there. The $4,000 that's under tuition, it is part of our NISNA contract for our nurses that we reimburse them if they go back and take classes, that we reimburse them for those classes. We don't have anybody right now that's pursuing that, but we do have it in our budget just in case there's an instance where somebody goes back and wants to take classes. And I mentioned the fringe benefits. So, and then on the next page, on page 69, we have our family health account. That again is 100% state aid funded account, represents the different things we have to do under our core services for Article 6 related to family health. The one thing I did want to bring up here, the 405-4630 account, that 29,300, I think it got inputted as the total amount for the whole 405 account. So that account actually should be 14,300. So that's another correction that I'd like to request to be made. So instead of the 29,300, it should be 14,300.
Going the right way.
Yep. And then under 406, the again, the 122,374, that represents the Article 6 funding that we get for any of our disease control programs. Things like rabies, immunization, communicable disease, chronic disease, it all falls under this account. And we would get 100% reimbursement up to the 500,000 from Article 6 funding. The TB expenditure line that represents, we have a contract with Saratoga County for our tuberculosis clinic. So we would reimburse them for any of our county residents that would go through that clinic and pay for any treatment that they would be required to have. So that account, again, we could spend hardly anything there, or we could have a patient that, there's quite a bit of expenses involved. So we've kept that consistent with the previous year. The 407 account is our community health account. We have an agreement with Adirondack Health Institute where they assist us. It's a multi-county project that they have, and they assist us with our community health assessment. So that represents the fee that's involved with them assisting us with that program. Under the health education line, the 16,000, again, that represents the our health education program. It allocates money to some of the school districts for any health ed programs that they'd be interested in, and also gives us an allocation for supplies or educational items that we would need for the fair. And again, that in the past couple of years has been off due to COVID. The 4054 account we no longer use. And then so there's the 4059 account on page 70. And that represents our early intervention appropriations. Some of these accounts we add to, Al had mentioned previously the early intervention administrative grant. So when we receive that grant, we distribute it to these different accounts. So some of them are zero now, but then would be increased once we receive that grant and carry it over into 2022. The 4059 4040 account, that's our contractual account that we pay our therapists for the early intervention evaluations. I shouldn't say we pay them. I mentioned earlier the state has taken over that. So the state actually pays them and then we reimburse through escrow anything that's not paid by insurance or Medicaid. The $5,000, the 4059 4300 account, we budget money there. We don't use it every year, but in the instance that a child would need an assistive device, we are obligated to provide that. The insurance does get billed first, but then anything that's remaining, or if the insurance doesn't cover it, we are responsible for paying for that. So that's why we budget that amount in there, is to cover any anticipated expenditures related to that. And yes, we just did have one. And then the 4059 4520, that's the large account in this budget, the 316,000. That's for, again, services that are provided either in the home or at center-based places for early intervention children. The state pays those providers, but then we're responsible for anything that the insurance doesn't pay. So that's where the escrow money is charged back to. And then we have had instances where we had to transport early intervention children. So we do like to have an amount in there to cover the transportation for those children. And then we have our Wic account. I'm not really sure if you want to go into a whole lot of detail there. It's 100% funded. And we take these budget amounts directly from the budget that the WIC coordinator submits to the state and has been approved. Again, I mentioned earlier, their budget period is different from ours. But that's our basis for these expenses that are shown here is directly out of what they've budgeted to the state. And again, I mentioned the fringe benefits here being listed twice. So they would just have to come out of there. And then on page 72, the COVID, the 4189, the COVID account. These expense accounts will be adjusted through resolution request based on what we have left in our grants. All of the expenses that would hit this account would be funded through the grants that we've received. So again, once we know what we'll have left in those grants at the end of the year, we'll carry that over into 2022. Any questions?
No, you did good.
Thank you. I do have one thing that's not on the agenda. And I should have learned, like KJ said, I should have learned from Patty and always put a miscellaneous on the agenda. But I didn't think of it when I was doing it. So I do have one thing. We got an email last week from McCarthy and Conlin. They do they help us prepare our cost reports. Our licensed home care service agency Medicaid cost report is due November 15th. So they have sent me a proposal to contract with them. So I just wanted to know if we can move forward with that. We have used, it's a professional service. The amount would be, and this is for the year ending December 31st of 2020. It's $5,500 is the amount that is in the contract, which is consistent from other years. So I was hoping to be able to move forward with that so we can get started with them and get the information to them that they need to submit the cost report on time.
I'll move that.
Okay, Brian moves it. Do we have a second?
I can run a meeting with only you and I, the only meeting.
Would that be a
I
second?
know you have a lot of power around here, but I don't have it. I guess I'll second it.
Thank you.
Bob, you must.
All in favor?
Sure.
Al?
This would be one that would be appropriate to get a waiver
That's
from the procurement policy.
I didn't know we needed a waiver with the amount.
This motion should actually be for the waiver, to be honest with you.
So it is.
That's what you said, I think.
So it's good as it stands with the waiver.
So if we have a waiver, do we need to go to finance?
You wouldn't need to go to finance anyway. All she needs is a motion for a waiver from the procurement policy.
So that's what you made, was the motion for the waiver. And then Matt seconded that, right?
That's what I thought I heard.
And we're all in favor. Aye. Okay, thank you. Okay, and we have to go back. Go ahead, Melissa.
The other item for public health that I did address is the subject of the public health director. In previous committees, it was directed by the committee to go ahead and get the fiscal officer vetted through New York State Department of Health. For the position of the director, the interim director of public health has been, the assistant director of patient services has filled in for the interim director of public health position. So we appreciate KJ doing that for us during this time. But now, I guess we're looking for approval or direction from the committee as to whether or not you would like to advertise for the position, to fill the director position. Currently, the fiscal officer has been vetted for the director position, so we can go ahead and take that to the personnel committee and then the full board for appointment if you would wish to go in that direction. Basically up to you, which direction you'd like to go in at this point.
The latter direction, I'd like to take.
So, Brian, you're making a motion to have it go to personnel as Tina being vetted for the director.
And then the full board for appointment?
And full board for appointment.
And this is for the fiscal officer to be appointed to that position.
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's what Brian, is that, you motioned that, and Matt?
But that's on this afternoon's agenda to discuss, that's setting. Yeah, I'll second.
Thank you. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, so I think, do we have anything else for public health? Amy, you're all set? Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen.
Good job.
Thanks, everyone.
Keep up the good work.
Thanks.
Okay, so we're going to go into DSS and OFA, and I think however you want to go.
One of us is staying over there, one of us is staying there.
If that makes you happy, go for it.
Yeah, if you guys just say you don't need to do it at all, it's all good.
I'll move that. I would have been doing seconds, but that one I'll.
Okay. So, see what happens when you relax there. Get us all a little bit paunchy. Okay, so do you two have a system as to how you want to start? I don't know.
Always at the discretion of the board, right?
James, do you want to go ahead?
Sure.
It gets, or however.
It gets a little convoluted.
It gets convoluted and it gets awfully dry, because there's an awful lot of accounts between us,
Yes.
so we could
Your revenue is up.
we can go back to that original.
Your revenue is up, that's good.
Really?
I'm only one vote, but.
We can go line by line from the first line if you want, we can volley back and forth between.
I think our, yeah.
So, I do have a few things that I would like to bring to your attention.
Yeah, very solid.
That would be good, do highlights.
Okay?
Yes, please.
Excellent.
Yes, thank you.
Glad you guys are picking up what I'm putting down. On page 14, we have repayments of medical assistance is 6010-1801, and that looks up considerably. It's a matter of us following more current methods as to how we're reflecting information when we claim through with the state. You would also notice that 6010-3601 and 6010-4601 are down to sort of flush out with this number. So if you did notice that there were bubbles as far as that's concerned, it's just a matter of us getting on board with the state and following some different processes. We have a new line in here, or showing relatively new for us on page 15 in the 6010-2705 gifts and donations, and that is a result of some work that we did, or collaboration that we did with the Treasurer's Office this year to formally acknowledge the fact that we have a food pantry account. And then on 16, 6010-4641 is the federal aid for heat. And this is pretty much in concert with what we've been receiving for information. HEAP was essentially a year-round program this year, and because of federal funding, they provided us more to be able to administer that. However, along that line, I did just receive guidance from the state that came through dated the 27th. Because of more of the federal funding, they have allotted us an additional $368,952 of revenue. Again, assisting with the administration of HEAP. They've additionally passed on a mandate to us, and I guess I can't say it's unfunded when they give us this money afterwards. But
the mandates are okay.
With about 1 day's notice, they let us know of work that needed to be done through our office that was never at all a state program. So they're sending us work along with, in this case, finally some funding. We have until September 30th of 2022 to spend that out. So it is not right now reflected in this budget. It is additional funds. The direction from it, from the directive that we had from the state, said, of course, that it would be to offset the cost of administering heat, but it also got room for being used for equipment associated with administering heat. And in the cover memo that I provided with my budget package, I mentioned that we had some copiers that were sort of on their last leg, but we thought we could probably get through 22 with them, but that would be another area that we would look to add on if magical funding came through, and I feel like this might be that opportunity.
Well, if there's a lot more work, it might be what, kill the copier.
So I don't necessarily believe it's anything that has to be adjusted right now. It probably could wait for a final adjustment after the fact, the budget, but to make you aware that that money is there, it will be something that we need to acknowledge, and at that point, I will also be asking for magical ways to spend it.
Does the new workload require more personnel?
We have really been balancing through all of the last year and a half with the number of staff that we have. We have been sharing the wealth of the work and sharing the wealth of the benefits of waivers that have been in place. So we are still down in our overall number of staff. We have vacant positions, and we're able to get the work done. I will be asking you for a backfill at the end of this meeting, or at the end of my presentation, and expect that perhaps moving forward, I will look to fill more of those positions that we have been as we've been going along, and I feel like we're doing okay. In the past, quite honestly, EAP administrative funding has not been sufficient to cover our cost of administrative needs, so we always have had to pull from other areas, and so now it's fully funded, and we're able to claim people to that perhaps in the past we shared with another program that wasn't as beneficial in this funding stream. This is 100% money.
Okay. On that line, do we have room to self-distance everything once we start putting people back in, more people? You have room for everybody?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
It's an issue.
It is an issue. We have room for the positions that are not currently filled. The expansion of foster care has stretched us to our limits, and that is a project that we're working on now, trying to rearrange. I would be well in support of us knocking down some walls downstairs and making some more space to allow for more distancing between staff.
We make you angry, you'll be able to do that on your own. I don't know.
I'm not a fighter.
Yeah.
I wouldn't damage public property. So just leave that as is, the keep line as is at this point?
I think so, too, because we'd have to do both sides anyway when it arrives, so.
Okay.
I think if you wait till January, February, when you come back with a plan, that's the best scenario.
Yeah, it's not ones that we were aware of or that we're relying on at this point.
By then, we might have the walls moved.
I'm happy to cut those walls down.
We have a lot of sledgehammers for 363.
And then moving forward for revenue accounts, Gina, that brings to OFA.
So some highlights for OFA is, again, I'm looking at page 17, line 1972, just to kind of just give you an update that this line is increased minimally by $2,450. I believe this is Al's favorite line. This is the line that speaks about the incorporation of contributions and cost shares. It is based on contributions made from services like meals, home delivered meals, congregate meals, transportation, case management, personal care. Basically, it's the majority of the programs and services that we do offer in OSA. If the services numbers increase, which as you'll see as I go on that we do have some funding increases, then the plan is for the contribution and the cost shares to also increase. as well. Just to kind of give you a heads up that we are state mandated to bill a cost share for our ISEP and CSE funding source, and also some unmet needs funding services that we provide. Also on page 17, line 67723772. This line here is state aid for programs, and as you'll see, we've increased by $130,320 compared to the 2021 adopted budget. And this increase is contributed to the new unmet needs funding, additional funds that we receive, and also due to some increases in state aid that we do receive for various programs. The next area on the revenue page, page 17, is line 677247772, the federal aid for programs. This line has increased by approximately $247,000 compared to the 2021 adopted budget. This increase contributed to the new American Rescue Plan funds that we received, and also due to minimal increases in federal aid that we received on various programs.
So this is one-time money, that was my question.
The American Rescue Plan funds.
Both the state and the federal, are these blips that will come back down, Stephen?
So in talking about the state increase, the unmet needs funds is the expectation and overall hope, most certainly with the new governor, is that that funding will continue. We did receive unmet needs in previous years, and that rolled over. In addition to the rollover of the previous year's allocation of unmet needs funds, they this year increased it an additional $85,000. In regards to the federal programs, the American Rescue Plan Fund, my understanding is that that will be just a one-time increase of $241,243. And in regards to the various programs, kind of go by the previous years, what happened the previous year for the allocation and estimate the future budget based on those increases.
So for 2023, that federal line is expected to go back down to the 2019 level? Ish.
Correct. Yep. That covers the OSA revenue side. Any other questions?
So that's the only question I had.
Okay, so let's just move on.
We're on to the expenses. Page 73. Start about a third of the way down the page. Our point ones are based on the same rates, the pay rate scales for 2021 because of the fact that we are currently in the process of renewing a contract with CSDA. It does build in, however, longevities and steps that would be considered for any of the staff that are current employees. It also does include what would be a full year's salary for the positions that I referred to as currently being vacant, as well as the expansion of foster care that has been approved by a previous resolution. We have noted that we have been trending up in our on-call overtime, and what I'm led to believe is that it's due to the complexity of the cases. I know that we have had workers put in 45 hours over a weekend within this past year. So I do want to take a look at what our processes are, and if perhaps there's anything that we are asking the staff to do that could wait until Monday. Other than that, that is the way that we are currently trending. Otherwise, within this page, the other talking point that I'd like to bring your attention to would be the computer equipment, 6010-2020, down right towards the bottom. In 2021, we budgeted to be able to purchase computers that in the end were replaced at the expense of the state. It is the last time we believe that the state is going to provide us with computers. When they did so this year, they made a point of telling us that there was a 3-year warranty on them. That said, we then received other funding throughout the year to include the ERAP. For the ERAP program, we were able to purchase equipment, and we did that at that time very strategically, adding in for the number of people that we had supporting our ERAP helpline laptops for all of them to replace their desktops. And we also received an Adult Protective Services grant that we used to purchase additional laptops. So we have not really, we have to a very slight degree drawn down some of the funds that we had budgeted in 2021. There is still quite a bit there remaining. We do need more computers and iPads, so we can spend out money this year and then reduce how much is needed for next year. However, we do have other needs that we had not originally planned for in 2021. So if we were to continue and replace all of the rest of the remaining computers that need to be, because we do still have some that can't run, I think, where are we at, Windows 10, we still have some that are limited to Windows 7, and also our iPad users who they have both the laptop or a desktop and an iPad because they carry the iPad into the field. The original iPads that we purchased had only 16 gigabytes of storage on them, and they are no longer able to accommodate the updates to the new software releases that are coming through. So what we are hearing, or what I am hearing, is that even when they are trying to erase everything else off to be able to allow for that update to come in, there's still trouble doing that, and that then relates to a security issue for the systems that we have and that the information that we're running on our iPad. So we have a need to replace 37. Those were our original purchase of iPads. We think we can do that with $13,000. That is more of a need it now kind of situation, as well as us then needing to finish out the rest of the computers. So,
are they all on that line? Is that what you're talking about, is the group that's there, or there's a group on top of that?
We think, so it is not effectively accounted for in the budget transaction detail, because some of that was additional information that's come in since. We do think between these two amounts, what is left in 2021 and what we have budgeted, what we've requested for 2022, will more than cover what we need. I'm looking for direction, though, on whether or not you want us to spend now from 2021 and then look to be able to adjust 2022 to a lower number before you finalize the budget.
If we know what the number is, we could have a resolution to finish up buying whatever it is.
Okay.
And take that all into consideration and take this out, if that's a possibility.
Yeah, I don't think it's a possibility to take it all out, but I think it's a possibility to
take that portion out.
Definitely decrease it. We also, one other thing that I have not spoken about, you probably should all, most of you are familiar with the training rooms that are in the basement level of this building and the technology that has been added in there. That was done in the past through a SNAP bonus award that we had received. The technology has never quite worked as effectively as we had hoped that it would, and with Terry McNall's suggestions, there are some options for us to make that much more user-friendly for many more purposes, across the county. So that's another thing out there that we could look at and talk with Terry further about. But I also think to the degree that we have that HEAP money, we might be able to pull some of that for any of the other expenses, as we talked about having a plan in 2022 when we recognize that. So, world of computers, copiers, laptops, and iPads, that's what I've got. I can get a resolution together, we can have it for next meeting, purchase the remaining of what we see that we need, that would spend out as much of this money, the 2021 money, and then decrease the 2022 number for you, if that's what you would like.
I'd like that, and I'd also like a plan from Terry on that room, if there's, can incorporate all of it. Finish it up would be nice.
Okay.
And I don't want, it's awful to have space that's not able to utilize to its fullest free for these elements.
Yes, yes. It has enabled us to do more there in terms of technology than we had in the past for, any sort of training and then virtual meetings, but it is still, much less capable than what it could be if we had the right equipment in there.
Al, did you have a question?
Ms. Hank first, please.
Yeah. Bob?
Hope we're not asking the same question.
Okay.
It seems like there's almost a triage that the equipment, the computer equipment that you need, would seem like those iPads are pretty critical. And maybe we ought to be looking at, in order of doing these things. I think the iPad is probably the first thing we ought to grab with whatever money is left. And
That is what I would build into the plan, and for the resolution for next month.
Okay.
Maybe this might be a question for Terry, but in her budget, she had $10,000 designated as DSS switching. Is that something that's in her budget because it's not eligible for reimbursement for you, or is it the first you heard of it? You might not necessarily know the
It might be the first I've heard of it.
backbone of,
Karen Baker is sitting back there with Becky Palmer, so they're our fiscal gurus, and Karen has, the pleasure of meeting with Terry on a monthly basis to talk about our IT needs. That might be something she's more familiar with.
What is switches?
Switches.
It's just a switching.
$10,000 in switching, and normally it's only in her budget if it's not eligible
Right.
for reimbursement under yours.
I honestly, we haven't talked about that.
So it might just be switching something, not actual switches. We don't know. We didn't have that.
The only reason I ask is because if it's eligible for reimbursement, we might want to get it in DSS's budget.
Right.
That's all.
There isn't anything that I wouldn't be aware of as, not being eligible for reimbursement through our budget.
If it truly is yours, then maybe there's an opportunity.
It might be something to do with a server or
That's my guess, but I
some
don't
other
know if it's
something
dangerous.
that's more county. Our systems are majorly on the state, but there are some that are on the county, and perhaps she viewed that as being something to keep there. I don't know.
Okay. Something to look at.
We had talked with her in the past about changing our, switchboard over to a different system, as well as the, what are the phones that, soft phones? We have not built any of that in here at this time.
She may have.
Yeah, maybe what that is. Okay.
And then on the next page, 74, just to draw your attention to 6010-2070, the vehicles line. We did not budget for any vehicles. That is something that I leave to the pleasure of the board to decide when to add in vehicles and when not to. At this point, what DSS has assigned to them, assigned to us, especially once the new vehicles we take delivery of the new vehicles.
What year is that going to be? 2023.
I think that they have them on a ship outside of Los Angeles or something. I don't know. I'm not at all sure what the status is with them, but they have been ordered and we should be receiving.
The car lots are pretty empty with all this.
Yeah, for sure.
There is a local share budgeted in the carpool though.
Won't make them get any quicker.
No, I mean for next year.
Yeah.
There's a local
Oh,
share
right.
budgeted in the
No,
carpool.
It just won't make them get here any quicker. You can't get them.
Associated with DSS vehicles?
Yes, ma'am.
That's what speaking to? So there may need to be some adjustment to this.
That's for the illustrious Brian R. Campbell.
Yes, okay.
Although it has to come for them to get reimbursed, that's the other line too.
Right. That's what she's asking.
And I don't have any other hot ticket items, remaining on that page. I think Gina will take it over for OFA.
So again, staying on page 74, going midway down the page to line 6010-4220. Like I do every year, I just like to bring it to the committee's attention that that line is a combination line between Office for Aging and DSS, and the Office for Aging part in that is related to the WCCAM advertising that we typically do yearly for our senior fall festival. That's usually around October, and so
2022, we'll be able to pick that up again. Going down a little bit further, again, just bring it to your attention that line 6010-4360, the computer supply line, that speaks about Office for Aging Nutrition Pro software program. It's a requirement for nutrition analysis to happen with our home delivered meals and congregate meals program. And so in agreement with IT, we're keeping it within the budget line here of OFA. And the big line is our 6010-4400, the subcontractor line. So this budget line truly speaks about the Office for Aging contracts that are in place and the fee-for-service programs that we have. To bring to your attention that this budget line has increased by approximately $123,957 from the 2021 adopted budget line. And the big increases really fall with the cost of the Sheriff's Department meal program. That had increased about approximately $84,000. For those of you that may not know, Office for Aging pays the Sheriff's Office meal cost for the home delivered and congregate meals program. And it's estimated that in 2022 that we will see an increase in people served, the increase being approximately 12,000 new recipients for nutrition services. So based on...
Is it 12,000 new recipients?
Correct. So we're estimating, when we came up with this projection, we're estimating a total of meals in 2022 to be about $98,400. Or 98,400 people. This increase is based on the cost of food going up, utilities also increasing slightly, disposable items and labor also going up. So right now we pay the Sheriff's Department $5.30 per meal, and the increase will equal to $5.60 per meal, so that's a 30-cent increase per meal cost. The other item that is on page 75, that line item does carry over to the next page, is to bring to your attention, as I spoke of earlier, we have new unmet needs funds in the amount of $85,000. You'll see that it's listed here with a slash transportation. Our hope is to use that additional $85,000 to address the unmet needs of Washington County's older adults in services like in-home services, as well as developing, which I've spoken to committee about in the past, another transportation program. The last area that I want to bring to your attention, another highlight in the budget, is on page 79, and this is a really quick one. This is just speaking about line 6772.21, and just to let you know that this year that increase is only around $522, and of course it's attributed to steps and longevity.
In your contract line there, is there any changes to your transportation contract with Lee?
There are no changes to the Lee contract.
I know they made some changes over in Granville, and I didn't know if any of that had affected your agency as well.
Not at this time.
Okay.
So like Tammy, I do have some other, couple of requests.
Gina, I have a few other, have some other appropriations. Talk about.
You do?
I do.
Big one.
Con over to Tammy and she'll go into those.
I could take you back to page 75. mine. 6010-4402, similar to Gina, I too, provide funding to the sheriff, and this in part covers the deputy that is stationed in the lobby downstairs, as well as, at the time that we negotiated this, an addition of an investigator. I believe that this contractual amount has increased only once since its inception. So this 120,000 has been flat for at least 2 years. I'm not sure how long, to be honest with you. That would be an area that if you wished to consider what his costs are for providing those services, it's covered in our MOU, and we would simply need to change the amount and put that contract through to the state for approval. But that would, of course, increase the cost in our budget, but we are also able to claim reimbursement for it, and therefore that revenue.
What's the percentage on that one?
It's at least 75. Everything is always at least 75.
Except for safety.
Except for some, yeah. Most every, I would have to dig into exactly what, account we claim it to and look at whether or not there's anything else as far as.
I mean, if it helps hit his budget and
Exactly.
the first quarter of the help he gave, it's kind of worthwhile.
My recommendation is that it helps the county.
Yeah.
If it's about covering his fees, and his fees are over and above this, for those particular things that we have included in our MOU, it would be a benefit to the county for us to increase that amount.
I can't tell you how happy I am that the 120,000 and the 551,000 on this side are the exact same numbers in the revenue side for the sheriff, so. They match.
So we're gonna change it, mess that all up.
There you go.
So that's, I would again take lead from you on that. And then the A6010-4625.01 grant line, that is a matter of the additional funding that was received through the state from the federal government for ESG, which is again related to housing assistance. And that money was not intended to only be spent out in 2021. We will be wanting to roll from 21 into 2022 after the budget has been passed. But that is also 100% money, so it would be a neutral impact to the budget. Moving forward to the next page, 76. Program expenses, 6119-4290 is showing $3,267,000. That is strictly what we pay towards the cost of children that are placed by their home school district into a special education setting that is a residential setting. So it is not, for instance, somebody from Fort Ann goes to BOCES for classes. It's not that, but if somebody from Fort Ann, again, just an example, were to have to go away and not be bused back and forth and stay on a campus or in a program, it is the portion that is the cost for that. So these expenses are quite high. There is at least one child that's placed through a school district that's placed out of state. Incredibly high cost for the county. School district is also paying for it. But it is not something that we impact. Just wanted to educate, as far as.
Timmy, it's over Medicaid, but there's actually some good news there.
Yeah, I saw that too.
I didn't mean to.
Don't skip the good news.
Go ahead. So the good news being, well, it's an educated guess.
No, it didn't go down. It didn't go down.
So what are you telling us?
Well,
it's one of those caps that's not a cap. That number doesn't move.
Yes, the number moves, and trying to determine, taking out what changed with COVID last year and trying to regroup to what the regular shares had been forecasted to be, prior to the pandemic and figuring out when they're gonna go back to those shares again. It's kind of a crapshoot. We went conservative with it. We did not consider FMAP, because I know there's always been this, when are we gonna get,
You don't know if it's coming or not.
when are we gonna get that money back? And so we didn't build that in. That's been a recommendation statewide. We went with the number that we felt comfortable with.
Which is still good.
As long as it, in the end, there's still something left there when we're looking at 2023. We went conservative, but hopefully not to the point that it's harming the taxpayers.
As long as they keep the cap in place, we'll be fine.
Now I know why you just want to talk about it.
I honestly didn't even have it highlighted, I'm sorry. I do have a note for myself here on the 61294290. That is the, right now what we're asking for 2022 is 76,000. It's down from the 166,000 that was budgeted for 2021. Some of you will remember that there had been a youth that had been placed in the state's custody. And that had been a point of argument, I think, amongst some of our departments. That youth actually was discharged. The state itself determined that he didn't require that level of placement, so we were able to bring that line back down. But we are preserving funds there because we know they won't bill us in time. So that is what will remain.
So you're expecting that one person will pay all of us?
We haven't been billed yet.
But you're expecting this?
Yes.
They'll pay all of it?
We looked at it, at the number of days that he was in and what that rate, daily rate is, and built that number right from that. There is always a chance that the state will do a retro rate adjustment. But it also means that in all likelihood, that 166 will stay there and go back into the general fund this year.
I hope he makes a dean goes to Stanford, that kind of stuff.
He may. And that is all that I have. Other than I do have a couple of requests, but Gina already jumped ahead of the line for that.
Go ahead. I'll take a pause. Go ahead.
Okay. I have two backfill requests. One is to backfill a social services examiner position. This one is one that's been vacated since June. We've been able to hold out since then. We would like to now, though, refill it so that we can better adapt to the needs of our program. It is something that's been budgeted for and has been vacant through this period of time.
Who would personnel?
I should also note that Danielle is aware of it.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Paul first. Thanks, Paul. And Matt, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And the other is a request that I actually brought to you last October. It was for a temporary backfill to our computer operations coordinator. You might remember that our DSS has its own computer operations coordinator, and we also contract with the IT department for coverage within our office. We were not able to hire somebody as a temp. We moved forward. Since then, we've added a second full-time position. Our computer operations coordinator that's been out for military duty is still out for military duty. We are awaiting another extension of her deployment. We don't have that right at this minute, but are anticipating it any day. We do now that we're ready to hire, because we are finally ready to fill our full-time position. We had somebody else that was a candidate that we were less certain of, but we do think he has potential, and we would like to offer him to come in as a temp and have him learn side by side with the full-time person that's being added on, with the potential that he might be somebody appropriate to fill any eventual vacancy that might result. So, long thing, we have a temp. a request to fill a person that's vacant right now due to military leave, and we would like to be able to move ahead with that.
Move it.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you. And that is all I have. Thank you, Diane. Excellent. Okay?
As I mentioned, I have a couple requests. At this time, I have a couple of staffing requests. One is to increase the Office for Aging staffing pattern with 2 part-time aging services aide positions. Those are grade 3 positions. Right now, the duties of that position are around delivering meals. As I've shared in the past, CWI is not engaging in delivering meals for our home delivered meal program, and we've had to cover additional routes with per diem staff. So this request is based on those additional routes being covered by part-time staff. We have been covering those routes already by per diem staff, and I can let you know that at this time, this request for the 2 additional part-time individuals will have no effect to our budget. There won't be a change to our budget on that request.
That's a request for 2022, right? To add those two in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Move it.
No, it's a request for 2022.
Oh, you just want to put it in the budget?
Yeah, right now it's not included.
It's for the staffing pattern, no, it's adding up.
Right, 2022.
Nothing more has to happen with that.
Not here. Not that right.
So, then to clarify, the next request on staff is, again, a request for the 2022 budget year, and that is the current title of Nutrition Services Coordinator. The request is to increase the grade from a grade 14 to a grade 16. At this particular time, this request is based on a discussion that I've been having with the personnel officer. The process has already been initiated with Danielle to review the job duties of this position, which include managerial and supervisory duties of the nutrition program for Office for Aging. The budget impact would be approximately $4,597.
So it's 14 to 16?
Correct. It would be a 2. So that's it with staffing. The next request I have is related to the American Rescue Plan Fund. As I shared, that is in the already in our budget under the revenue line. However, it is not included in the expense lines based on the discussions that we had with the committee. So at this particular time, there is equipment that I'd like to purchase for the nutrition program, which includes 6 heated meal carriers. The total cost is approximately $2,112 based on the last estimate that we had received. The other request is around, well, I should say not so much request, but it's on the discussion to be had in regards to using the rescue funds to purchase vehicles for the Office for Aging Nutrition fleet.
Vehicles meaning
That goes to the ARPA committee, right?
Goes to what?
The ARPA committee?
No, what concerned me is I thought she just said the revenues in the budget of the expenses aren't.
That is correct.
Yeah, because we talked about rolling them over if we can do it this year.
Yep. So
We
right
had
now,
this discussion before.
Are they in your 2022 request?
right now, so
Or
we're
in
talking
your
about
2021 amendment?
within the revenue piece of the budget, it hasn't been assigned to any lines in the expenses, just based on what the committee decides.
Is it in your 2022 request?
The revenue is,
The
but
expenses,
the expense is not.
do we have a number for that? The total, because some of it, that's not on vehicles, that's in your total.
That is correct. So it
Right.
would be, yeah, so right now we'd be looking to, cover the cost of the equipment,
and then look at the cost of purchasing fleet vehicles. You did ask about how many. I guess it would be really based on the cost of the vehicle, to see how many vehicles could be purchased with the extra remaining funds.
We'll just have to split that number.
And in the future, you'll want to keep them together, don't put one in without the other.
Right, you gotta
Keep them connected. But now Brian's gotta fill a hole.
Well, or do this year. But yeah, it's just what there's so, is it ARPA funds availability? What's that?
Her
direct funds, not
the 11-8.
right, no, it's the direct funds. Just timing and everything is difficult. Okay.
So do I need to do anything further with those two?
You need to talk to Brian.
Yeah, you'll just have to give me the total numbers in there, but you have to give me the other number out, so we agree that the same number's left, and we just have, we're good.
Thank you.
2022 is the problem.
Right. But
So,
this year you take it all.
so Brian,
Yes.
would Gina try to spend it out before December 31st, 2021?
It's according to what's available, because that's the problem right now with cars is
So
availability.
I guess my question is, so are we, is she asking to go out to bid to purchase vehicles at this point? So it's on the table in terms of putting a resolution in for this budget year and moving forward with these purchases of vehicles and equipment. We're holding off putting it in the 2026 budget, and then we'll certainly have the guidance around how to pursue, the avenue of purchasing vehicles.
What does it encumber the revenue?
Have you received money this year that's been amended this year's budget? What money are we talking about? I'm sorry?
Received a lot of money this year. This is a separate pool.
The art money is money that we would have to claim for. It's not cash this year.
It's
So you have some kind of award letter or something that,
Yes,
like you have something that told you it's available to you?
correct.
Yes.
You have to ask for it.
That's correct.
And we have not proactively done anything in 2021.
We have not, no. I've just brought it to the committee's attention that we have received.
But you
we
have a
not
number
allocated it.
that you put in next year's request
Right.
for revenue. How much is, you know what that number is?
What's on the line?
Yeah, it's $241,243.
That's money available to you to buy vehicles,
Yes.
and whatever you expend it,
Well,
you
mine
can ask
is-
for reimbursement.
Minus 21,
Correct, $2,112 based on the last estimate that we received for the equipment.
So you would have an expense of revenue in the same year, which is next year.
Or it could be this year, depending
or
on,
this year.
depending on
So, to next year's budget, though, it's a $241,243 hit, because it's either not in as revenue, or it will go in as an expense.
Right.
So that's what we have to.
So the money she gained from Tina, she just lost on.
No, well, only on the one side, the rich side still all that.
Do you think we could put it out for bid, go through the whole process, and acquire a vehicle by December 31st?
Only if they're on the lot. If they're on the lot.
Even then.
What's that?
Even then.
Even
You got a lot of work to do to get to that point.
That's pretty tight for Melissa's office.
Well, and we need to know what we're going out to bid for.
Correct, like,
The F-150 Lincoln.
Electric cars, buddy.
yeah. Good luck with that.
Well, it makes the most sense. The vehicles would never come over
We'll
here.
be here in the next 3 hours, don't start that.
But I, to be honest though, I would like some direction, like if you're gonna work with purchasing to go out and do that, send that bid out, we need to know what we're bidding for, and if the electric cars is on the table, we need probably to discuss it, so we get direction from all of you supervisors to make sure that's the direction we want to go in.
Are there any constraints or guardrails regarding this funding you're getting to say that you need to go in this direction or that direction, or is it sort of, whatever you get, just send us a bill and we'll repay it?
Yeah, I've already reached out to the state and shared with them the possibility of using the money towards the purchase of vehicles, and we did get in writing back saying that that was something that's permissible.
Do they give you, is 1 permissible, is 10 permissible? Do we know that there's a cap?
That was not
not mentioned.
$240,000.
I feel like if it was, it
Well, I
would be
mean,
mentioned.
Right.
If you have, if you have five, you replace all five, I just wanna make sure that we're not, because again, with the ARP money, if anything disallowed, they just don't pay you, and then you're off that money, so.
But you said you have a letter that confirms what you could.
It's a generic statement that pretty much says that the ARP funds can be used to purchase vehicles, plural.
So I guess the way I look at that is, I would, if we could, I think I would try to bid them to see if what was on the lot was available, just to know what the number was and if it was a possibility. And if it isn't, then we just do it next year.
You can agree on what.
I wouldn't rush it, I would just get the bid to find out.
The bid for what?
What's that?
The bid for what?
Whatever you want.
Whatever you want. I agree. Now, it's going right back at you. What is the function of these vehicles so that you need a van because you need more room, do you need space?
No,
Do you
so
need
what there would be some basic requirements really that I would ask in the vehicles, and most certainly, all-wheel drive vehicles of utmost importance because the nutrition program runs year-round. So having something that has good traction in all weather conditions is very important. Most certainly, I'm not looking for a large-size vehicle, an economical vehicle. We discussed electric vehicles. In addition, it's nice to have the safety feature of electric locks. So if, in case of an emergency, the driver can lock or unlock the vehicle at any point.
With Tammy's cars, there were some ground clearance issues with some of your mule routes. Is there some ground clearance things you have to be aware of as well?
Absolutely. In Washington County, we do deliver to all the back roads.
Right. So I mean, those are things we have to know to get the proper vehicle.
Yeah, I think it would be a reach to get them this year, but I think it's worth doing the work to find out what the cost is and the opportunity.
Well, I mean, you got to December 31st to encumber them, regardless.
No. Yeah, it's true. If you're gonna look at electric, you got to October 29th, the thing terminates.
You're looking at electric.
No.
Who's the decider on what vehicles we're gonna spec out?
We just discussed it,
Who's us all?
Matt,
17 or the Public Works Committee?
Matt, we have discussed it, Gina and I.
That's fine.
So it's not me pushing this.
Sure it is, right? No, come on. You're pushing electric vehicles, you're the only one. Let's be honest with each other.
Wait a minute, let's be honest with each other. So think about it, these vehicles are totally stationed in a different facility where there's no fuel. It's the perfect place for you waste people's time coming over here to fill up and going back. They would go back.
So you made that decision already?
No, I'm just saying, I'm trying to have a philosophical discussion here. It's where the savings are. So a third of the maintenance cost, a third of the fuel cost, and less miles and less time for the employee.
Again, my question is, who's the decision maker on what's going up to bid?
Hopefully Gina and the board.
I got two different answers. Just trying to so we get to an authority that we can make a decision so we can move forward.
I think Dina ought to come to us with a request saying, here's what we want.
That's what I think.
Come to who?
Come to her committee,
Okay.
and have the committee say, okay, this is, we agree with you, but what's the bid of it?
RAV4 hybrids are perfect. Perfect in between.
This is not the time, let Gina come with a request.
And HHS will send it to finance.
Didn't we already just put bids out for high ground clearance all-wheel drive vehicles? Did we get those bids back? Do we have those numbers? Can we piggyback off that bid? Can we order them to find out where they are and get them?
Well, we did, and we ordered the,
Trailblazer, that never showed
Thank
up.
you. Well, we haven't gotten them yet, but it's supposed to be coming.
Well, they're putting the chips in the high-end cars, so they're not building the low-end cars.
How many vehicles do you need, Gina?
So at this particular time, we operate 10 routes a day, Monday through Thursday, and then we operate 11 routes on Fridays. We add an additional route, which includes the Putnam area. So, Monday through Thursday, 10 vehicles, and on Friday, 11 vehicles.
So do we want to fit 10 to 11 vehicles into $240,000?
At this particular time, we already have a fleet that's assigned to OSA, and most certainly I would be under the discretion of DPW to review the current vehicles, to see which vehicles need to be basically swapped
You have
out.
11 in your fleet?
Yeah.
9 vehicles assigned to our fleet, and to cover the additional routes, we are borrowing, 3 additional carpool vehicles.
And of course, 2 of those are vans.
We have one large cargo van,
Yeah.
that is assigned to the OSA fleet. That vehicle does not go out on the road to deliver meals. That vehicle is strictly for going back and forth between the sheriff's department and for going.
I think age-wise, there's 5 or 6 probably replaced, just age, just looking at it, quick. I looked the other day.
And the oldest vehicle we have is 2007 Ford Focus.
So what I'm hearing the board, the Human Services Committee say is that we're gonna task Gina with putting together a proposal and bring it to the next Human Services Committee. Will that allow for time for you, Melissa, to go forward with it at the end of the year? Another month?
It happens before the end of this year.
No. You'd have to come with it right away if you want.
No, but it'll give Brian time to figure out what to do with next year's budget.
Right, so, and if you're gonna look at it this year, it would have to come to finance, that's, if you're gonna look at it this year. In other words, we put it in next year's budget, and you've got months to look at it then.
It's a tight crunch, in my opinion, to get it into 21. It really is. And you might wanna wait till they renew the rebate money anyway in the spring, so.
Well, except it might not be fit, just like we found out this time.
But this year's money's dried up, so there's no sense.
No, this year's money's still there for the vehicle.
Hold on. She has to tell us, she wants all-wheel drive, she wants
Right.
high ground clearance, and she wants X number of vehicles, that's what you're looking at. We need the detail before Melissa can even open the notebook.
As we found last time, I think when we went out to bid, we were so general, it was very difficult, we didn't get many responses,
Right.
we had one. So if we knew more of the specific type of vehicle you wanted to bid, I think we might have a better result.
At least
We
more
cut-
parameters.
Yeah, but we cut hell at the time before because we bid just one, so I don't know how that's gonna work.
If we're using Ford Focus
Yeah,
now,
remember you had bid, like, one vehicle.
Oh, the previous one, yeah, not the one that worked.
Right, well, but that's what.
The one you bid doesn't fit her parameters.
No, I know, but you need to bid one vehicle in order to get where you gotta get.
So,
That's the problem.
so at this point, Gina's gonna task with what her department needs? Is that where we're at? And go forward and bring it back to this committee? Or we're gonna go to finance?
I'd like to know numbers. That's what I tried to get before, the number. We can't get a number because we never did it.
I don't know if this is any help.
We have a number.
The 3
Thank you, yes.
The 3 Trailblazers are coming in at $65,345 that are on order right now for the.
Oh, I thought you were gonna tell us something.
No, I don't know, I'm sorry to say.
that's not each, that's total.
That's combined for the 3. So there's 21.
Hey, my heart stopped for a minute.
Becky, can you repeat that number? 3 Trailblazers on order currently for DSS is $65,345.
And you will not see that level again, I promise you.
Yeah, that put them at
There were 21
$21,448 each.
Julie, it's-
What I said,
Thank you.
there might be one of those.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna compile information for this request and bring it to committee.
Did we say finance or back to human services?
Well, that's kind of a decision for the chair of the committee. I think maybe it's just you, I think, when you want to see it through your committee.
Which would bring it another 30 days, and if we're not worried about time, then that won't matter. And that
Do we
will-
ever bid or acquire vehicles from any other committee besides Public Works? Ever? Does everything run through Public Works? If that's the case, then it should go through Public Works.
Public Works would be a carpool with buying it. This is a grant where they're actually buying, that's the only difference.
Does it make any difference from you what committee designates what goes out for bid?
No, I was just.
It doesn't matter to me, usually the department heads, the
Yeah.
contract purchasing, so that.
I was just gonna timing, I just, when I see opportunities dry up, I hate to, because then you're just spending taxpayer dollars after that. That's what I don't like.
So, are you clear on what?
No. Clear as mud.
I'm clear that I'm gonna be compiling the information, but I'm not really where I'm gonna
You
present
still have to
it.
work with Deb on which ones to replace. But Deb is still involved.
Oh, yeah.
So would that be something to come back to DPW or not?
I would see that would be, no, as long as she deals with Deb in the process, I think she'll be fine.
So please tell us how many vehicles you want and what important parameters, what specs are important to you. You don't get into transmissions and engines, right? Just basic parameters. You would like this,
I can definitely
and
do
this.
that, thank you.
And then, Melissa, what else do you need from a purchasing standpoint?
That's all.
Okay.
Okay. And she, I mean, you said this already, didn't it? What I heard, I thought was 5 vehicles. Is that?
No, not at this time. We're gonna go to DPW and find out which vehicles are, need to be swapped out, replaced with new vehicles.
So that's the starting point.
Yeah, maybe she could date.
Right. Okay. So then when all this information is compiled, okay, what committee do you want it to come back to? It can come back in 30 days to hear, right?
We're gonna leave it up to you.
And, okay, then, perfect. Bring it back to here. That was easy.
That's the way it'll be done to finance anyway.
Right.
You'll be both in here.
Right.
Well, the actual process is, in the real world, would be come in here, this committee approve it, send it to DPW.
This one has to go through DPW.
For a list saying, yes, this is what we think you ought to buy, this number of cars, then you go finance. Would that be the proper thing? If we're in a hurry to try and get it through this year, then I don't see that being.
Does the DPW committee need to weigh in if she's already working with Deb ahead of time?
That's what I'm thinking.
I don't know, it depends on what the DPW committee wants to, but, if we're talking about buying vehicles, it's like the DPW committee ought to be in on it.
I think that if there's any question, I think it should go from Human Services to DPW to Finance.
Okay.
That way everybody's clear as to the direction it's going, in my opinion. Thank you, Bob.
I'm happy either way. I just don't like the opportunities that we lost already to lose again. So that's where I'm at.
Hey, deja vu, like you said. Yeah, absolutely.
You want to go to IT too?
It won't be the last time you.
Are you feeling left out?
We'll spend taxpayer dollars to make something more of it, make it a great thing. I love it.
Okay, so I think we're.
I'm going to handle that, you can strategy within all of you.
I think we're, that part is done. Do you have anything else?
That part is done, so I believe. So if I do have another item, for the committee, Health and Human Services Committee. So in the past, I've talked about, looking at various non-traditional transportation programs for our, older population. At this particular time, I would like to look at an agreement with a organization called Go Grandparent. I did meet with them yesterday and did receive some budgeted amounts in regards to their services. Again, if you're not familiar with Go Grandparent is kind of a mothership for working with Uber and Lyft. They have on staff individuals who book Uber and Lyft transportation services for older adults. The program, to me, seemed had a lot of safety measures in place to include, knowing that Uber and Lyft drivers are vetted through systems to make sure that they have the right clearances and safety backgrounds put in place. The one piece that I am not sure about is that this, most certainly, when I speak about going directly to a company, how that fits in with the RFP process. Is this something for the committee to waive and for me to go directly with Go Grandparent?
What's the dollar amount?
So at this particular time, there are some flat fees, and so they have different tiers for the cost of the service. The one tier that I was looking at, they consider like a pilot program. The pilot program serves up to 10 people a month. That group of people can look different every month. So you could serve monthly fee of $200. They also put into that a tip for the driver, and every person who receives a trip gets the flat fee of $5 per trip. So those, I can share with you that those are kind of the set amounts. The other amounts are the actual cost of the trip. At this particular time, again, I had the conversation with them yesterday. My thought is to put some parameters around that because we would have the budget capped for this program. Right now, as I shared with you, that we did put into the budget the additional $85,000 for unmet needs. And what I'd like to do is kind of take that funding of $85,000 and split it up between in-home services and put a capped amount for the Go-Go Grandparent Transportation Program.
I guess my two questions are, is there a reason that you wouldn't want to bid it out just to see what's out there, number one? And number two, what do they provide? Is it something that the people who are working with us already can't do for you? Is it something outside of the scope of what your current providers provide to you? Like you have the transportation services now.
Yes, so right now.
It's outside of the scope of what they can provide you?
Yes, it would. It would provide for me, it's a more efficient program in terms of serving more people at one time. Right now, we do contract with Wic for transportation services. The administrative cost is pretty high in that, and what I'm seeing, according to the data, is that the people served is not quite up to par. And with this type of program, I feel like it's more efficient because the administrative fees don't seem as much compared to how many people can be served at a time. In addition, with this type of program, Uber and Lyft operate out at all hours and 7 days a week. So it wouldn't be restricted by Monday through Friday between a certain period of time. Most likely with like Leap, it's business hours usually. That's when the transport takes place. So I see the benefits to this program compared to what we already have with kind of the traditional model of hiring staff and then, with Leap hiring staff, maintaining a vehicle. With this, it's more or less, we're really truly providing services. As far as putting this out, I don't know of any other companies or agencies that do this type of service. They have staff that are on the clock 24/7. So one thing that we could do is book appointments ahead. We're provided with a software program where we register folks so we can kind of get a handle on how many people are using the services. That dashboard is also seen by the Go-Go grandparent individuals. So like for instance, if there's a situation where somebody books an appointment and an Uber and Lyft driver doesn't respond within 15 minutes of that appointment, the Go-Go grandparent program has a guardian team behind the scenes that sees this happening. They go the extra mile to make sure that somebody provides the service. At that point, they have been known to reach out to taxi cabs to kind of fill in the Uber and Lyft pocket that happened. And in addition, they kind of make it work. They do a lot of the legwork behind the scenes where if we ran a program like this in the office, it would be a lot of manpower, it would be a lot of hours, plus you're talking about software purchases that would have to take place.
Don't misunderstand me, I wasn't questioning the value of the program, but the two things that I was really curious about was, why you wouldn't bid it out, and I think you addressed that because what I thought I heard you say was there's not a lot of people, there's a lot of people who do this.
Okay.
But the bigger question, I alluded to it earlier and kind of just fell off, is that you have some pretty specific transportation needs. Does this company give you some things that you might currently be lacking? Is it worth looking at a bigger transportation conversation for you, not just this little slice of 10 people a month? Is it worthwhile looking at how you do transportation
overall
as an agency?
So that was my thought. So when you talk about the 10 people per month, there are different tiers. The next tier elevates in cost pretty significantly. The next tier you can serve, from 11 people up to 200 people, and, everything increases. Your implementation, fee more than doubles. The monthly fee goes from $200 to $2,450. So my thought was, going kind of tying it back into what you were asking or saying, was that, we start small, see how this goes.
Right, because you're about $100,000 relief right now, right?
And then, looking at what's happening currently with our existing contract, for transportation, and seeing if some changes need to happen.
That's all.
Instead of ending one contract and starting something that's kind of an unknown, I'd like to kind of start gradually into this, and then come up with kind of a strategic plan towards the future.
Understood. I didn't want you to just limit yourself to a little box when you might have broader needs, that's all.
May get there someday.
Sure.
I love the idea, I mean, the 24/7, the fact that you can take one to either doctor's appointment or health, I mean, that's pretty broad, but is there a liability from the county with any of this? Is there, or can they get this to go to, say, well, somebody wants to fly and see somebody, do they go to the airport? I mean, is there a limit, are there parameters what they can or cannot do?
So we would come up with the parameters, most certainly. So like, for instance, in New York State, Ontario County already has this pilot program implemented, and I've been in discussion with them and how it's going. And so they have parameters where they've restricted transportation to like only medical appointments. So they haven't opened up the window to broaden it to include things like bringing somebody out to lunch or bringing somebody grocery shopping. But those types of parameters can most certainly be defined by us, by the county itself. So they did pull some data. They have access to crime-seeing statistics from Uber and Lyft, and at this particular point, there are, they said, out of our 17 towns, they said that we're in pretty good shape. They said 4 towns, the availability of a Uber or Lyft driver is accessible within 15 minutes. They said that there are other towns that have limited availability. But they said on their end, that's very good, because when they run that same type of report for other counties, the information that comes out speaks that there are no driver availability, and here in Washington County, we don't have it. It's pretty much saying that if anything, it was limited. Right now, they ran a report. Also, they already serve 15 to 20 residents in Washington County with the Go-Go Grandparent Program. Residents can go right to this agency themselves and not have to go through the Office for Aging. Those people are pretty independent. The people that I'm trying to reach are the people that actually need the assistance for the transportation. For instance, these people most likely have a cell phone and are able to use technology to link in with the Go-Go Grandparent Program. Our office for the program that I'm speaking of would be more like the liaison to assist those.
It definitely seems that they're unmet needs, I mean.
Yeah, I think the other question is, like, they won't carry your groceries, they won't carry your walker, they can't really touch you right now. I mean,
So I did ask, sorry to cut you off, but I did ask about that.
yeah.
They actually are, their Go-Go Grandparent contacts all the Uber and Lyft drivers that provide services to Washington County, and they have a series of questions that they ask them. So they ask them things like, would you be willing to fold up somebody's walker and put it in the car? Would you be willing to carry the groceries to the house? So they collect all that on the driver. So when Go-Go Grandparent gets this request for somebody, they look at the individual needs and then they match them with the driver, which is nice.
The only other thing that would be nice if it's available, I don't know if it costs or if it's something you're talking about, was because of these people aren't independent, is there like a backup for a family member if someone doesn't arrive or if something doesn't happen, a text goes out to the child or the grandchild or whatever and says, hey, here's what's going on. Is that incorporated in at all?
So they do have this guardian team that works behind the scenes for those types of instances.
Really?
Because your concern is exactly my concern, and most certainly that they would work with the guardian team that works behind the scenes, so that guardian team would become active and try to come up with a solution for this person to get to their appointment. The other piece that they mentioned is that they help us with publicizing it, so they cover the cost of doing brochures and flyers and pamphlets. They also want to recruit more Uber and Lyft drivers, so if we come across people, we'll assist in that in terms of spreading the word. If folks are out there and say they want to help with our senior transportation program, these individuals would work with GoGo and then sign up with Uber and or Lyft, and they have what they call a boot camp training session that they do with those drivers. And so when the driver goes on to Uber and Lyft, when the driver gets that request, as some of you may or may not know, they have the right to either accept or deny that transportation request. So the drivers have the ability to pick and choose who they're transporting. So if folks, we can work diligently to increase Uber and Lyft drivers, then it's most certainly more beneficial for the success of the program.
I like the idea.
It was very innovative.
So, do we need a resolution or something to go further, or?
If you want to give her a waiver to test drive that little pilot program, then yes, you need a waiver.
I guess I can, I'll make that motion. I think it's a good idea.
Do we have a second?
Second, and put the $1,000 up front and $200 a month.
It would be for this $1,000 implementation fee, and then the monthly fee would be $200, plus you're talking $5 per trip, and the cost of the trip plus the tip.
So that would be our cost, and do we get any reimbursement from anything on that?
So this is going to be using unmet needs funding, which is 100%. There's no local share attached to unmet needs
And
funding.
how long is the agreement that we have with?
I did talk to them about that, because my unmet needs funding for the state fiscal year, they want to suspend it by the end of March, so April 1st, our new state fiscal year starts with NYSOFA. And so I did explain to them if we could kind of put that parameter into this agreement, start from now, and then have it end then, and kind of look back at this period of time, see how it was active, see how successful it was, and then kind of see where we're going for that next year to see if we do indeed continue to receive the additional unmet needs funding.
So do we have a second?
So that's left side.
Your second, thank you. Hey, all in favor?
Aye.
I can't see them. They're there.
4 votes, then?
Do you have enough?
So you have 3 in the room, you have Wilson and Ward online.
And nobody said no over there.
And Paul was there too. Okay, thank you. So,
Okay, thank you. And so my intention most certainly will be to engage in an agreement with this company. I will certainly update committee on the success of it and the progression of this program. And most certainly I welcome any thoughts or suggestions about the parameters of the program. If anybody wants to share those with me, I'm more than welcome to.
thank you. You know, there's about a couple times a week I get a phone call from someone needing right somewhere.
You
So
know,
thank you.
No, that's true, and the fact that it could be any time of the day is kind of sickening.
Right. Very good. Okay. Any other questions for Gina?
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, so I think if we don't have any other business or anything else to discuss, we can adjourn. Dave, did you have something to say? No. Okay, so we're adjourned. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, have a good afternoon. We'll probably see you later.